as we all know, the topic is proposed amendment in the charitable trust, and we will discuss in the arm length about the proposed change and the technical part. And today we have a session chairman with us, Shri Sushil Kumarji Pransuka, and our learned speaker is Suresh Kejriwal. And both are very known to us and very close to our heart. And we have I welcome Advocate Kamal Jain, who will address the keynote, and I welcome all the senior members who are joining today, and over all the participants across the country. They are joined today, and they all know that today we have the best speaker of the Calcutta, India, Sureshji, and they all are enthusiastic waiting for their turn to listen to our Kejriwal sir. And the best part is that Pransuka ji has also confirmed, has given his consent to chair the session, and he will chair the session. Now I request Advocate Kamal Jain to kindly address the keynote. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mahendra. Good evening to all my seniors, past presidents, chairmen of the session, speaker of the session, friends and delegates. I warm welcome you all. Today's topic is Charitable Trust Comprehensive Analysis with Proposed Amendments. Section 11 of the Income Tax Act provides exemptions from tax for the income derived from property held under trust for charitable or religious purposes. Therefore, it is necessary to understand the concept of charitable or religious purpose in the concept of Income Tax Act. It was observed in Uttam Vikas versus CIT Act 1931 that for constraining the word religious or charitable purpose, it is necessary to investigate the meaning of these words in the particular system of jurisprudence that may be followed by SSC. Under Hindu law, charity, whether secular or religious, is a part of the contents of the word dharma. Trust, which have charitable purposes as their basic object, are known as charitable trust. If it is for the benefit of public at large, then it is termed as public charitable trust. Although Income Tax Act 1961 does not define a public charitable trust, Section 2, subsection 15 thereof defines charitable purpose, which includes relief to poor, education, medical relief, and other objects for general public utility. Earlier, once the registration was granted forever, but now every trust have to apply for re-registration, and re-registration will be granted only for 5 years. Before 6 months of the completion of 5 years, again, we have to apply for further renewal. For new registration, in case of new registration, the registration is granted within a month of application, applied. But the registration will be provisional registration and should be for 3 years. Before completion of 3 years, just have to apply for regular registration and will be granted for 5 years after proper verification. Again, some changes are made in section 11, 12A and 12AB in the budget of 1922 that will be dealt by today's speaker, Shri Suresh Kejriwal and Shri Sushil Pransuka ji, chairman of the session. Now I request Mahendra to read the profile of chairman Shri Sushil ji Pransuka ji.
Thank you, sir. So, Sushil sir do not need any introduction. He is well known to all over India. But as a matter of custom, I have to. Sushil Kumar Pransuka sir. He has qualified as chartered accountant in 1984 and has more than 38 years of professional experience. During his professional career, he has been advisor of different corporate charitable institutions in the field of direct and indirect taxation. He also advises different corporate on issues like merger, demerger, and business restructuring and taxation implication. He is also expert in family settlement and taxation advisor for family settlement. During his professional career, he was elevated as member of Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. He is past president of Association of Corporate Advisor and Executive and member of different professional associations. He regularly appears before ITAT and other appellate authorities. Now I hand over the proceeding to our session chairman, Sushil Pramsukha sir. Sir, over to you, sir. Now, before that, I request Shyam to offer a flower bouquet to our session chairman, Sushil Pramsukha sir.
Welcome, sir.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to
Thank
DPL.
you.
Please accept.
Thank you.
Token of
Thank you.
respect
Thank
to
you.
us.
I accept
Thank you, sir.
gracefully. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, over to you, sir.
Friends, it is my privilege indeed, where I have been asked to chair a session which is being addressed by none other than Suresh Kejriwal, who's very masterly command over charitable trusts, as has rightly been pointed out initially. I know him as very dear to me. So I could not stop my temptation and immediately agreed that to chair the session. Friends, when I was having a glance today at today's newspaper Economic Times, there was an article, Breeding Mistrust Against Trust. It caught my eyes. What is mistrust being inflicted on the trust? I don't know. Then I read the article. Some of the amendments were reflected there, all right, but nothing I could found that there is any mistrust being inflicted by the government or anybody else. So whatever may be, we all know that trust, charitable trust or religious trust are taxable under the taxation of charitable trust, and religious trusts are contained in section 11 to 13, which is a self-contained code apart from other provisions of the Act. Friends, we know that government has to collect taxes and at the same time has to meet the social objective also. We may be aware that in India, thousands and thousands charitable organizations and NGOs are helping poor and doing charity work, which government could not have done alone. To meet this objective, government has granted exemption to these charitable trusts to do charitable activities so that social objective can be met. But friends, no charity comes with charity. Because if you are doing some charity and government is giving some charity to you by granting some exemptions, it does not come free. There is a reciprocal obligation to meet some stringent requirements of the law, conditions, and you have to comply. Otherwise, social objective will be not met and these provisions will be misused by the unscrupulous taxpayers. Keeping that view in the mind, and we also are aware that there are a lot of Supreme Court judgments on this, that wherever there is exemption provisions are there, strict conditions have to be complied with and provisions have to be very strictly construed. So in that light of the matter, we have to judge any amendment whether this is a mistrust or trust. Frankly speaking, I am watching the amendments last so many years in the trust. Hardly I see any year there is no amendment in these sections. And when I have a close look at the amendments, and I fathom myself, I don't see any amendment is illogical. Whether it is a depreciation, whether it is a excess expenditure. Let me tell you, when depreciation disallowance had come in the amendment, a lot of discussions with the professor circuits were there, why people are claiming buying of assets as application of income also, and again the depreciation also. I was very vehemently arguing that how it is possible if courts have given some relief, thinking or some liberal construction may have made by the court, but how it is logically possible that on the one hand you are claiming the asset as application of income, then again you are claiming depreciation, whatever it may be, because it is self-contained code 11 to 13. Every exemption has to fall within these three sections. Like that, by procuring the loan, you are making application. That has also been plugged in last year amendment. In corpus, we have been using corpus for general application. That was also wrong because corpus by inception is exempt income. So I don't see any amendment. So like that, this year also, there are many amendments have come, which I can bucket in two, three areas. Like registrations have been more stringent, and on some violation of the law, specified incomes have been taxed, are proposed to be taxed on a very different footings under section 115 BBI. So all these aspects, I will tell you some of the amendments which are has been proposed in this financial bill, like two regimes, 2023C and 1112 have been sought to be aligned. Some of the provisions were in the 1112, which were not in 23C. Some of the arrangements, provisions were 2023 have not been 1112. So these all have been made part. So now question arises, but which provision, which regime is more beneficial or less bothersome for the taxpayer, and whether which regime we should go. So I'm not going into detail because Suresh is there. He has a masterly hand on all these things. I know him from the very beginning. So he will discuss all these things. And second amendment, most important amendment is that from this year, application of income has been made on cash basis, not on accrual basis. This again raises a question that how the accounts will be prepared when TDS is required to be deducted, when some of the charitable like Section 8 companies are accounting for a mercantile basis. So how the can be prepared? There are some of the questions which have arisen in between. There are more amendments in 11 subsection 3. Earlier, we used to have 5+1 accumulation provision. We could accumulate for 5 years, and there was one more year available. But from assessment year 23-24, this 1 year provision has been dropped down. So whatever accumulation has been done has to be spent out in 5th year itself. Otherwise, it will be treated as income in the 5th year itself. This again gives some thoughts that what will happen to the already 2-3 years back file return, whether vested right will be lost, or in the financial year 2023, in respect of 2 financial years, amount have to be spent, one for 22, March 22, 21, and March for 22. So all these paradigms and discussions will be dealt by Sureshji very happily, and I'm sure that everybody will be benefited. I'm not going on, so many amendments are there. I'm very sure that Suresh will be very fruitful, and everybody will meet with managers. Let us start. Sureshji, you please take it over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for throwing the lights on the new amendment in the budget and explaining the thing so simply and very well. Now, I request Shyam to read the profile of our learner speaker, Suresh Kejriwal ji, sir.
Thank you, Mahendra Bhaiya. Mr. Suresh Kumar Kejriwal is a practicing chartered accountant. He is mainly working for NGO sector and had wide experience of more than 30 years. He is one of the associate authors of the books Taxation of Trusts and NGOs and Trust and NGOs Ready Reckoner by Taxmans. He is one of the persons involved in preparing the draft FAQs for NPOs on GST published by the Committee for Cooperatives and NPO Sectors ICAI. He has facilitated a large number of workshops, seminars organized by various institutions and ICAI NGOs on the topic concerning NGO sector. We welcome Sureshji to DTP.
To offer a flower bouquet to our learner Suresh Kejriwal ji, sir. Sir, please accept.
Please accept our greeting, sir.
Very well accepted, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mahendra ji. Thank you,
Thank you.
Now over to you, sir, for your deliberation.
Thank you, Sushil Bhaiya, for setting the tone for today's discussion. And the topic was, the section was only 3, 11, 12, 13, and 1023C. But the way the section is drafted, the way you read, you know another issue, clarify another issue. So a number of times you read, you will again know another issue. So this is the beauty of these sections.
Absolutely right, sir.
So, and I have been told by Parasji, who has contacted me for this workshop, that I should make my presentation in two parts. First, I discuss the key concepts, how the NGO taxation work, so that it is easy for us to then understand the amendment. So in that line, I prepared my presentation. So I'm sharing my PPT, so it is easy for you to understand what I'm talking about. Is it clear? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So मेरे पास कुछ क्वेश्चन भी आए थे, महेंद्र जी ने भेजे थे, उसको भी मैंने दिमाग में रखा है, and that's
Right,
why I have added this first slide after that. So to begin with, we must know how the NGO or trust are going to be incorporated and what are the initial registration we should take. And this is very, very important for us to understand. So the process for formation and registration, it starts with basically 3 steps. The step 1 is in which we form the NGO. The legal body is created. The step 2 is, hello, this is clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please continue.
And the second step is the enabling registration. Here, once the NGO is formed, we have to have an enabling registration whereby we have been recognized as charitable institution. And third step is to apply for an operational registration. And it will depend upon our activity, it will depend upon our funding arrangement. So when I would talk about the formation, so the NGO or NPO can be formed either as a society or as a public trust or as a Section 8 company. Like in a business concern, we can have a proprietorship, partnership, or a company. Like in an NGO, we can have a society, public trust, or Section 8 company. But any form we take, the Section 11, 12, 13 is same. It doesn't depend upon the mode of in which you are registered. Once we are registered as a society, public trust, or as a Section 8 company, then we have to have an income tax 12AB registration. And this is the registration which gives you a charitable status. Because societies, the clubs are also registered as a society. So just by forming a society, you are not coming as a charitable institution. So enabling registration is the Income Tax Act, and this is the central act. So each NGO, whether they are a society or a trust or a Section 8 company, they have to have an Income Tax Act registration. And normally we go for 12AB registration. Initially it was 12AA or 12A. And the third step registration is operational registration. It will depend upon the funding pattern. It will depend upon your activity. And this may include FCRA Act. If you want to receive foreign fund, then you have to have FCRA registration. If you don't want to receive foreign fund, there is no need for any FCRA registration. So it will depend upon your funding arrangement. Again, depending upon your activity, you have to go for the GST registration. Depending upon your activity and the number of employees, you have to go for labor laws registration. Now the Niti Aayog registration through Darpan portal is also becoming very, very important, because when you are going for FCRA registration, this Niti Aayog registration is a must. This year income tax registration new form, they are making providing that if you are receiving a government grant, then you have to have a Niti Aayog registration. So that means this is a central body which wants to keep a track on number of NGOs, because the NGOs are all over India, in rural areas, cities, everywhere it is, we find the NGOs are there, and they are registered as a trust or a society or as an informal body. So very, very difficult to know how many NGOs are operating in India. And the Niti Aayog has started a Darpan portal just to have an idea of how many NGOs are working in India, at least receiving government grant or receiving FCRA fund. Then we again know if you want to apply for a CSR fund, then you have to have a CSR registration. So basically FCRA Act and CSR registration will depend upon your funding pattern, from which source you want to have received foreign fund, and GST, labor laws, and Niti Aayog will again depend upon the other requirements. So this is in brief the concept of NGO formation, enabling registration, Income Tax Act, and the operational registration depending upon your own activity, number of employees, and all those things. So this is the first part. Now, the second part is what is NGO? And Kamalji has rightly said the NGO term has not been defined under Income Tax Act. And what they have defined is charitable purpose. So we talk about FCRA Act, we talked about Niti Aayog, we have talked about GST, but none of the act has defined what is NGO. And by the name, it is non-government organization or non-profit organization, So by the name, they are meaning what they are not. They are not a government organization. They are not a profit organization, but what they are, it is not defined. It is not defined in any of the law. What they define is section 215 defines the charitable purpose, not what is charity. So what are the then characteristics? How we know this institution is a charitable organization? It is not. So first characteristic is that there is restriction on profit distribution and not on earning surpluses. When we say non-profit organization, we mean that the NGO cannot earn surplus, but the restriction is on distribution of surplus to the members. It is not earning a restriction on earning of surplus. So as an NGO, you can earn surplus, and that's why income tax allowed you to accumulate 15% of the income earned during the year. So there is no restriction on earning of surplus, but the surplus cannot be distributed to the members or the governing board members. Again, NPOs are voluntary in nature, meaning the members and governing body members participate without any personal interest. In the case of a business organizations, the shareholder participate with their interest because they earn dividend, they have a ownership right. But here, no governing body member and general body member doesn't participate with their personal interest. They are volunteers in nature. And it is self-governing. Self-governing means there is no direct control of the government or the donor or the beneficiaries. NGO is working for the beneficiaries. Funds are given by the donors and the tax exemption is given by the government. But these three entities are not part of the governance of the NGO. And that's why we call NGO as a self-governing organization. And that's why so much of restrictions and compliances penalties for the NGOs, because when the government is giving you tax exemption means they are funding 30% of your income because they are by not taking tax. The donor is not participating in the governance. The beneficiaries, they are not participating in the governance. And that's why the government is very, very particular in self-governing, and non-compliances result in number of penalties. And again, in an NPO, there is no bottom line approach. Means when you are doing a business, then you prepare a profit and loss account. And when there is a profit, you will mean that business has done good. If there is a loss, will mean that business has not done good. But in the NGO, everybody thinks that they are doing good to the society. And there is no bottom line approach like in the profit and loss account in the case of a business organization to understand which NGO is doing good and which NGO is doing much better than what the other NGO is doing. So there is no bottom line approach. So these are the basic characteristics through which we can understand which organization can be called an NGO, and enabling registration is the Income Tax Act. Then very, very important to understand what is charitable purpose. Now, again, it is very, very important to understand that charitable purpose is different in different act applicable to NGO. And that's why when we are going for FCR Act, we would have to understand what is the meaning of charitable purpose under FCRA. If you are going under income tax, we have to understand what is the meaning of charitable purpose under income tax. Under for GST, a different meaning. Under CSR, Schedule 7 is different. So income tax defined 215, 7 limb, relief to poor, education, yoga, medical relief, preservation of environment, preservation of monuments, advancement of any other object of general public utility. There are 7 limbs under which 215 income tax defines a charitable activity. Under FCRA, they are defined economic, they are defined education, they are defined social and culture, and they are defining religious. So FCRA goes with another limb. In GST, they are defining education program or a skill development program for a limited and specified person, not the full program, as we see in the Income Tax Act. Again, public health towards very specified purpose and specified person, not as broad as 215. Then preservation of environment, then advancement of religious and spirituality. So when GST talks about that any charitable activity and organization registered under section 12A and doing charitable activity is exempt from GST, but their charitable activity is much limited than what the NGO is doing. So we have to understand the charitable activity implemented by that particular NGO falls within GST charitable activity or not. And if you fall under GST charitable activity, then only that receipt from that charitable activity can be exempt. So the first point which I am making is submitting is whenever you analyze your position, you must go through under which act you are analyzing your position, because each act has a different meaning. Again, the Income Tax Act not defined what is relief to poor, what is education, what is yoga. Income Tax Act has not defined. And these are being settled through judicial pronouncements. What can be come under education? What can come under medical relief? Again, economic, social, again, they are not been defined under FCRA Act. So though scheduled purpose basic theme has been defined, but they have not defined under which limb what activity will fall. And in the NGO, that's why it is very, very important to understand the linkages. Because suppose you are running a program for a preservation of water, and you fall under income tax under medical relief, but you naming that program under GST under preservation of environment to claim the GST exemption. Under annual report, you define this program in a different way. So you have to be very particular how you define under GST. You must define under income tax, and you must define that program in the same way under your annual report. Otherwise, 3 different reports will give 3 indication, and now every reports are being merged, and department has the data. So if you are claiming anything under preservation of environment under GST, to claim it and exempt, but under income tax ITR, you have not shown any expense under preservation of environment. You have shown every expense under medical relief. So your GST exemption may be at risk. So the second submission was the scheduled purpose and different act has a different definition. Now, what is trust? The trust has not been defined under Income Tax Act. The trust is an arrangement by which property is handed over or vested in a person to use and dispose it of for the benefit of another person. And trust can be broadly classified into 2 categories. A public trust is one which benefits the public at large or some considerable portion of it. A public trust can be of 2 types: public charitable trust and public religious trust. And again, we know it is a private trust. In case of a private trust, the beneficiaries are individual or families. And private trust can be of 2 types: private specific trust and private discretionary trust. And today we are focusing on public trust, public charitable trust and public religious trust. So when we always talk about trust, then why we form as a society and why we form as a successor company? Because nomenclature, we are using the word trust. So let me understand this thing. Explanation 1 of section 13 provides, for the purpose of section 11, 12, 12A, 12AA, 12AB, and 13, trust includes any other legal obligation. And what are those legal obligations? The trust itself is a legal obligation, as the trustees are legally bound to apply the income of the trust in the manner for the purpose specified by the author of the trust, and it includes the following: successor companies or guarantee companies, such companies also holding the properties under a legal obligation. Similarly, the institution registered under Societies Registration Act are holding the properties as a legal obligation for charitable purposes. So society and successor company are also holding the property as a legal obligation, and section 13 explanation 1 clarifies that the trust includes legal obligations, and that's why section 8 and societies are also covered within the definition, within the charitable purpose and within the taxes, charity taxation. Then why only section 8 and society? Why not other form of legal obligation? Then we have to refer to section 80G 5. So 80G 5, Roman 5 provides that one of the conditions for approval for institution to get the 80G approval is it is registered as a public charitable trust or registered as a society or registered as a successor company. That means 80G 5 approval also recognize this 3 form: public trust, society, and successor company. Again, they are saying universities and substantially financed by government, but they basically also recognize these 3 basic form to get the 80G approval. And that's why in practice, when we see the NGO, we find the NGO is being constituted in any one of the form. But whatever form we are registered, the charity taxation is no different. It applies to everybody. So 11, 12, 13 is common for every form of trust. So we have discussed the charitable purpose, we have discussed the charities, and we have discussed why the trust includes societies and successor companies. Now we're coming to the topic, scheme of taxation for a charitable trust. So we know the one scheme of taxation is 1023C. Second is section 12AA and 12AB. Third is 1046. This is for a body constituted by central and state government. And fourth is 80G, where the donor gets the benefit if the concerned NGO has approval under section 80G. And when we talk about section 1023C, then it has 2 different mechanisms. One is non-approval cases, and second is approval cases. And under non-approval cases, it comes under section 1020, educational institution substantially financed by government. Then medical institution substantially financed by government. Then educational institution up to 5 crore of annual receipt, and medical institution up to 5 crore of annual receipt. So these 4 category are under non-approval category. They are not subject to any requirement other than filing of return. So they are not required to be approved before submitting the return. They can be engaged in their activity. The tax is totally exempt, and only compliance for them is to file their return, yearly return. So, and what are the approval categories? Approval categories is charitable institution of national importance, religious institution for public religious purposes or religious cum charitable institutions, educational institutions which are not covered under the non-approval category, and the medical institutions which are not covered under non-approval category. So here, just like 12AB registration we have to take, the NGO has to take the 1023C approval. And both the NGOs are eligible for ATG approval. So now this year budget, they wanted to make this approval, 1023C approval cases and 12AB cases have a different mechanism. In certain compliance mechanism applicable to 12AB, not applicable to 1023C. So this year budget, they have proposed to make this 1023C approval category and 12AB at par. They have tried to make it at par. So this is the first amendment we will discuss when we discuss the amendment. But this is broadly the scheme of taxation: 1023C, non-approval and approval, and 12AB. And this year a proposed amendment, 12AB and approval category, they want to make it at a par. Now the scheme for taxation, the 4 step. First, we have to compute income subject to application. Normally what we do, we are referring the general purpose report. General purpose report means the report which we prepare to submitting for this to the Societies Act, so under Societies Act or under the Companies Act, and we call it a general purpose report. But income tax 10B is a special purpose report, and we try to prepare our 10B report from this general purpose report, and that's why number of confusion arises. So the scheme for taxation for 11, 12, 13 says the first step is you have to compute your income. The second step is then you have to calculate the amount of application. Then you have to go for accumulation if your total applications fall short of 85%, and there are other compliance mechanism also. When we talk about computation of income, so the first category is the income from the trust property to be computed in commercial sense. That means the heads of income are not applicable. So 11, 12, 13, whatever income we earn, we have to compute it on a commercial basis. Commercial basis means charge against income we have to deduct while computing the income. Normally what we do, expenditure side totally we calculate as application, and the income receipt side we consider as a receipt, as an income of the trust property. But the first stage you have to compute the income subject to application, and while calculating the income, you have to deduct the expenses earned to expenses incurred to earn that income, charge against income. And heads of income, 5 heads of income is not applicable to the scheme for taxation for NGO. Again, exempt income under section 10, whether they are to be applied with or they are totally exempt. Section 10(1) agriculture income and section 1023C. Apart from these 2 sections, all exempt income under section 10 are subject to application. There are no exemption to them. They have to apply 85% of that exempt income as well. Only agriculture income and 1023C income are totally exempt. They are not required to be applied 85%. Third, the fundraising expenses or expenses incurred to earn that income has to be deducted while arriving at the income on a commercial basis. Depreciation will not be considered a charge against income with effect from 1/4/15 if the asset has already claimed as application. Sushil Pransukaji has already dealt this point that previously there were occasions where assets were claimed as an application of income, and again the depreciation was again claimed as an application of income. That means double deductions was made. In certain cases, it was what they were doing. They are taking the total asset as an application of income, and from the next year, the depreciation we are deducting from the computing income, not taking as an application of income, because income has to be computed as commercial sense, and that's why if that property on which the acquisition has been claimed, that property is being used to earn income, then they were used to claim depreciation while computing the income. But now the act has been amended and is made it very clear: the asset which has already been claimed as application, no depreciation can be claimed again. then exempt portion of anonymous donation shall form part of the income subject to application. That means anonymous donation that is exempt up to 5% or 1 lakh, whichever is higher. So that exempt portion will come under the income subject to application because we have to apply 85%. And corpus donation, last year amendment, if the corpus donations we are receiving and we're not depositing into a specified mode, then that corpus exemption will not be available. And we have to also apply that corpus donation as an income subject to application. And capital gain, very, very important to understand. The capital gain normal provisions are not applicable here. We have to compute capital gain as per the normal computation. Normal computation means if the asset has already been claimed as application, then your cost of acquisition becomes nil, entire sale process becomes capital gain. Or you have made an investment in mutual funds, and only then the only difference part becomes the capital gain. So first you have to compute your capital gain on a commercial basis, depending upon your cost of acquisition and depending upon which asset you have already claimed as an application. The second part, you have an option to apply this capital gain fully 85% as per the other income, because this income merged with your other income subject to application. Or you can go for section 11(1)(a). 11(1)(a) says if the entire net proceeds has been invested in another capital asset, then the entire capital gain shall be deemed to be applied for charitable purposes. Meaning thereby, if you have a capital gain of 1 lakh out of the sale proceeds of 2 lakh, and up to total 2 lakh you are investing in another capital asset, then 1 lakh capital gain shall be deemed to be application for charitable purposes. And what is the meaning of capital asset for the purpose of 11(1)(a)? Because capital asset has not been defined under section 11, 12, 13. So the department is given a guideline, a circular, clarifying that even the investment in fixed deposit for more than 6 months will constitute capital asset. So basically in an NGO registered under section 12(ab), if the net proceeds are invested or reinvested in another capital asset, maybe in FD for more than 6 months, there is no need for any additional income subject to application. And income from incidental business activity, we all know we have to maintain a separate set of books of account, and whatever income is there, that is also added as a part of the income subject to application. So in the first part, what we have discussed, we have tried to compute income which is available for application. Now, how to compute application? Now, application amount will consist of both revenue and capital in nature. There is no distinction between revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Even purchase of vehicle, purchase of school building will qualify as an application amount. There is no distinction between revenue and capital here. Then if the expenses are incurred out of loan, then there is no application in the year of incurring expenditure. But in the year when the loan is refunded, in that year, that amount shall be considered as application. That means the expenditure has to be linked with the income of that year. If that year income is not linked with the application, then you cannot claim that application as an application for the purpose of income tax. So if this year application is out of the loan, then you have to defer your application in the year when the loan is repaid. You can't claim that excess expenditure in this year return. And that's why when you're submitting your ER schedule, ITR 7 ER schedule, the total expenditure, then you have to fill up how this total expenditure has been funded. And they are mentioning out of the income, out of the loan, out of the corpus fund, out of other sources. And out of the income only goes in total income schedule. So basically expenditure out of income is only qualifying as an application. Then inter-charity donation other than corpus donation shall also be considered as application. And though under section 11(2) there are certain restrictions on it, but normally inter-charity donations are also subject to application. Again, there are certain disallowances and deferment. And what are those things? The amount of applications shall be reduced by 30% of the corresponding amount if there is a non-compliance of TDS, just like business. If any application is subject to TDS and we have not declared TDS, then the 30% of the amount shall be disallowed, and it shall be allowed in the year in which the TDS provisions are complied with. Again, more than 10,000, if you are making cash payment, then that amount shall be permanently disallowed. There is no deferment here. That amount will not be considered as application. Again, inter-charity donation towards corpus, this shall not be considered as application. That means whenever you give inter-charity donation out of the amount of income you cannot make a corpus donation to another trust in order if you want to claim that application, that amount given as an application. Because inter-charity donation towards corpus is not considered as an application. And if you are making expenditure just for loan, we have discussed, out of loan we are incurring any expenses, then in the year of refund of loan, that shall be counted as an expense. Similarly, suppose you have made an you have received a corpus fund and you have made an investment under 11(1)(d). In second year, you have matured that FD because you wanted to make some expenditure. Then from that investment, you broke that investment and you have incurred some expenses. So in that year, when you broke that mature investment, in that year, the expense will not be considered application. But in which year, when you want to again replenish that corpus, when again you're making the FD, in that year only the application will be considered. So just like loan, in the corpus FD, if you want to have a cash flow, you want to make certain expenditure and you have to break certain corpus FD, you can incur expenses, but application will be considered in which year in which the income is used to replenish that FD amount. Again, we have made the FD after 5th year, then that 5th year will claim the application, not in the year in which the application is done. So all these are deferments we have to understand. So that means source become very important to claim that application out of the income. If it is from the loan, a different application. If it is out of the corpus FD mature, different application. The application has to be from the income. So we have just, I'm going in very, very small way, very, very nutshell, the concept of taxation here. So the computation of income we have discussed. Computation of income means income subject to application. Then we have discussed how we can going to compute the application amount. The third is accumulation. We all know we have to apply it minimum 85%. That means 15% of the income we can accumulate for our future purposes. And that means 85% we have to apply. But if we can't able to apply 85% also, suppose out of 100 we applied only 80, then balance 5 rupees, either you have to pay tax on that as income, or you have a two option to spend in subsequent year or in the year of receipt, or to accumulate it 5 years. I will deal in detail in separate slides. And the other issues are, we have to also compute income due to violation and not subject to application. In the first row, in the first here, we have to understand how to compute income which are available for application, 85%. But again, we have to compute income which are not available for application and which has arisen out of the non-violation. Suppose you have applied for, you have taken an option to spend in subsequent year, and in subsequent year also you have not spent. Then that income will become an income without application and you have to pay tax. That means these incomes are not subject to application and you have to just pay tax on that. 11(3), suppose we have gone for the 5-year accumulation and the 6th year we could not spend. In the 6th year, you have to pay tax on that income. So these are the income which are not available for application and these are directly charged to tax. Suppose you have spent outside India without taking CBDT approval. So that portion of the amount applied outside India, that will consider as a deemed income for you without any application and the tax has to be paid. Anonymous donation in excess of exemption limit, they are not available for application, you have to pay tax on that. The second is, even after registration under section 12AB, we have to follow conditions. We have to follow 3 to 4 conditions to claim year-to-year benefit under section 12AB. Just by getting registration, your task is not complete. Even after registration, you have to follow certain conditions. I will again deal this in detail through another slide. Then investment, we have to go for 11(5) mode. Whatever is specified mode, we have to invest according to that. And then section 13, we also provide certain situations where benefit of section 11 and 12 shall be withdrawn. Benefit to a specified person, investment in non-specified mode, private release purposes, all these come under section 13. Then anonymous donation under section 115 BBC. If there is no details of the donations received, from where the donations received, a separate section 115 BBC deals. And this doesn't apply to a religious trust. This doesn't apply to a party religious and partly charitable trust, but it applies to a charitable trust. And 1 lakh or more than 5% of the donation will be subject to 30% of tax. And most important section is 115 TD and 115 TF, the tax on aggregated income. If your registration is cancelled, then you have to pay tax on aggregated income under section 115 TD. And aggregated income is defined in section 115 TD, and it says at the time of cancellation, the total market value of the assets owned by that entity minus liabilities shall be taxed at maximum marginal rate. So why I have touched upon briefly this section, because when we go for the amendment, we will find there's a wide specified violations in which your registration can be cancelled. And if your registration can be cancelled, you shall be subject to aggregated income tax under section 115 TD. So these are in a very nutshell, the scheme for taxation for the NGO. First, we have to compute income. Second, we have to compute amount of application. If the applications fall short of 85%, then we have to go for accumulation. I will deal in separate. And then we have to also compute income which are not available for application. We have to follow certain conditions. We have to make our investment in a specified mode. And we have to see that section 13 conditions are not being violated. And we have to see that all the donations are with all the details. And there is no occasion that our registration can be cancelled. Now, the requirement of minimum spending. As we have already discussed, we have to apply minimum 85%. And if that falls short of 85%, then there are two options. The first option is to exercise an option to spend in subsequent year as the income has not been received or any other reason. Mostly in the case of TDS, suppose you have an FD with the bank and the bank has not given you accrued interest because the interest was accrued. So in that case, the income has not been received and your application falls out of 85%, you can go for 9A. And you have to submit 9A form. But in this case, the 9A has to be submitted within the due date of the filing of return. So for this year, the due date is 15th of March. Then we have to submit 9A within 31st of March. The second type of option is to accumulate for 5 years. Suppose you want to accumulate the fund for a bigger project and you can't start spending in the first year itself until as the amount is accumulated. Then we can go for accumulation for 5 years. The form number 10 has to be used. And here, very, very important to understand, we have to submit form number 10 within due date of submitting the return. And the return has to be also submitted within due date. Both the due date has to be mentioned. Not only submission of form number 10 within 15th of March, but even ITR has to be submitted within 15th of March. To ITR can be submitted up to 31st of March. But if you are claiming section 10 accumulation, then ITR has to be submitted within 15th of March. And again, corresponding amount has to be invested in 11.5 mode. So these are in view how to exercise your shortfall amount, whether to go for 9A, whether to go for 10, what are the due dates, and whether 9A doesn't require any corresponding amount to be invested separately, but form 10 requires that amount to be invested separately. Again, there are changes in the proposed amendment in form number 10, 11 to accumulation part, not in 9A part. The changes in only in 11.2 part. Now, very, very important to understand the conditions. Even after you got your registration under section 12AB, in order to get the benefit of section 11, 12, 13 on year-to-year basis, you have to follow certain conditions. The first condition is registration, which we have all done, the revalidation of the existing registration. New cases, they have to go for provisional registrations. And that provisional registration has to be converted into a normal registration. Very, very important to understand, in this year, some of the NGOs has received only 3 years registration. If they have received 3 years registration, that means they have received the provisional registrations. And that provisional registration has to be applied for a normal registration by 31st of March. Though form number 10A, AB has not been uploaded, but they have to submit that application as well by 31st of March. Then renewal of registration every 5 years. I will not go in detail in the registration formalities, and re-registration or modification of objects, and to make the registration operative under section 12AB. So I'm not touching upon registration part in today's discussion. I will deal upon with other conditions, which is more practically useful to us because we are all registered on section 12AB. The second condition is audit of accounts. The audit report has to be furnished in form number 10B at least 1 month prior to the due date of submission of return. That means if the 15th of March is the due date of return, your audit report has to be uploaded by 15th of February. The second condition. And the third condition is filing of return. The return has to be submitted within the time spread under section 139. That means returns can be submitted by 31st of March. The due date is 15th of March, but as a condition for 12A, the return can be submitted by 31st of March. Now, just deal in detail what is the audit requirement? It is mandatory for a trust to get its books of account audited to avail the exemption under section 11 and 12. Books of account are required to be audited where the total income of the trust before exemption exceeds the maximum amount chargeable to tax. And these accounts can be audited by a chartered accountant, and the report has to be furnished in form number 10B. It has to be furnished at least 1 month prior to the due date of submission of return. And prior to this amendment, the return, this uploading can be done along with the return. That means today you are filing of return, then just before that you submit your 10B. But since last year, it was required to be submitted 1 month prior to the due date. And that's why in number of cases last year, 2021, tax demands have come because in that year, the 10B was uploaded after 15th January, though before filing of return, but after 15th of January. And that because of technical reason, as the 10B was not uploaded within the due date, the total amount were subject to tax, whatever they have received without the benefit of section 11, 12, and 13. So returns income can be submitted belatedly, but the 10B has to be submitted within 1 month prior to the due date. And if it is not submitted, then the benefit of section 11, 12 is withdrawn, and the total amount of income is subject to tax. And similar situation is well for the filing of return. The return is required to be filed if the total income exceeds your maximum marginal amount, that is 2.50 lakhs. Finance Act 17 has inserted clause BA in section 12A1, making furnishing of return of income as a condition to claim benefit of section 11, 12. Meaning thereby, if you have not submitted your return by 31st of March, you cannot get benefit of section 11, 12. If 148 notice is issued and you are filing your ITR 7 after 31st of March, because 148 means within the same year you have not submitted your return, then you cannot claim benefit of section 11, 12. Because for getting the benefit of section 11, 12, your return has to be filed within the belated return time. CBT has clarified that the return can be submitted within the time under section 139, which shall include the due date for furnishing the return of income, or section 139(1) or 139(4). Thus, income tax return can be submitted belatedly to comply with this condition. And if the ITR is not submitted by 31st of December, now extended up to 31st of March, the 11-12 benefit will not be given. And in 148 proceedings, we can't claim the benefit of section 11, 12, 13. So very, very important for us to understand the importance of submission of ITR. So these are in brief the NGO taxation. And now at this particular point of time, we can have some discussion on the issues on the NGO taxation to proceed further. महेंद्र जी, इस टाइम में कुछ अपने डिस्कस कर सकते हैं जो भी अपनी क्वेरीज आई हुई है, एंड देन वी गो फॉर द अमेंडमेंट्स.
सर एक यू देयर मित्रुका जी, श्याम मित्रुका जी हैं क्या?
एक सेकंड भैया. नहीं सर, नहीं दिख रहा है.
तो उनका क्वेश्चन मैं बोल देता हूँ.
हाँ.
एक ट्रस्ट रजिस्टर्ड अंडर सेक्शन 12A is having LTCG of rupees 100 lakhs and interest income of 5 lakh. Trust use 15 lakhs towards charitable activities, leaving net surplus of rupees 90 lakhs. What is going to be tax rate, whether MMR or 10% under section 112A?
अच्छा, अजय भी हैं. अजय मित्रुका
जी को अनम्यूट करो.
कर दिया. हेलो
मित्रुका जी.
हाँ महेंद्र जी.
हाँ, आपका क्वेश्चन बोले सर, रिप्लाई दे रहे हैं.
देखिए सर, मैंने कहा स्टार्टिंग में कि 11, 12, 13 के लिए हेड्स ऑफ इनकम नहीं लगती है. ठीक है, तो कैपिटल गेन का कोई भी हेड्स यहाँ नहीं लगेगा. यू हैव टू कंप्यूट योर इनकम कॉमर्शियली. ठीक है, कॉमर्शियली माने यदि आपने जो इनकम लिखा है 100 लाख का, तो मैं मान लेता हूँ कि वो 100 लाख में कॉस्ट ऑफ एक्विजिशन यदि पूरा क्लेम कर लिया तो पूरा आपने नील पकड़ा है, या इन्वेस्टमेंट क्या है तो आपने उसको कॉस्ट ऑफ एक्विजिशन को लेस किया है. ठीक है, एंड यू हैव कैलकुलेटेड दिस 100 लाख एज अ कैपिटल गेन ऑन अ कमर्शियल बेसिस विदाउट एनी. म्यूचुअल फंड है तो ठीक है, तब तो आपका री इन्वेस्टमेंट का जो अमाउंट एक्सेस है वो आपका कैपिटल गेन हो गया. तो जिस 100 लाख जो आपको मिला है, इट बिकम्स योर इनकम सब्जेक्ट टू एप्लीकेशन. नाउ यू कैन एक्सरसाइज द ऑप्शन अंडर सेक्शन 11(1)(a). आप अपने जो आपका नेट प्रोसीड्स है 100 लाख के लिए, आपने हो सकता है 200 लाख का म्यूचुअल फंड बिक्री किया हो, तो 200 लाख का जो सेल प्रोसीड्स है वो इंटायर अमाउंट यदि आप इन्वेस्ट कर देते हैं अनदर कैपिटल एसेट में, तो ये जो 100 लाख की प्रॉफिट है वो डीम्ड टू बी अप्लाइड फॉर चैरिटेबल पर्पस मानी जाएगी. तो आपको टैक्स देने की दरकार नहीं है.
म्यूचुअल फंड में अगर रीइन्वेस्ट हो गया तो
म्यूचुअल फंड में करें या आप एफडी में कर दें मोर देन 6 मंथ.
अच्छा,
ठीक है.
तो म्यूचुअल फंड में सर कितना दिन के लिए करना पड़ेगा?
देखिए इसमें वही जब इन्होंने एफडी के लिए बात की तो मोर देन 6 मंथ बोला है, तो हम लोग ये एडवाइज करते हैं कि 2 बैलेंस शीट दिखाइए जरूर। यदि मार्च में बिक्री कर रहे हैं तो 2 बैलेंस शीट दिखाने से बेटर रहेगा।
राइट सर।
उसको इन्वेस्टमेंट मान लिया जाएगा।
हाँ हाँ हाँ
अच्छा, उसमें वो टैक्स फ्री हो जाएगा सर।
हाँ, टैक्स फ्री हो जाएगा,
तो उसके
कारण
बाद
कि
सर
एनजीओ में ये कंसेप्ट है कि आपका जो कॉर्पस है ना वो कैसे टूटे नहीं माने।
ठीक है। अच्छा सर, उसके बाद भी कुछ सरप्लस बच जाता है तो उस पे टैक्स
जो सरप्लस बच जाता है आपकी इनकम में मर्ज कर जाएगा। आपकी जो नॉर्मल इनकम है आपको 85% खर्चा करना है। यदि आप नहीं करेंगे तो फॉर्म नंबर 9 दीजिए, फॉर्म नंबर 10 दीजिए, जो आपका ऑप्शन जो नॉर्मल इनकम का चलता है, तो इसके लिए कोई अलग अदर नियम नहीं है।
अच्छा, उसके बाद भी अगर सर सरप्लस बच जाता है तो 112 के हिसाब से टैक्स रेट लगेगा 10% का।
टैक्स रेट में भी नहीं आ रहे हैं। पहले आपका जो सपोज 100 लाख की इनकम थी और आपका 11 के आपको खाली 50 लाख के बेनिफिट मिल रहा है, आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट जैसे किया था, ठीक है, तो 50 लाख आपकी इनकम फ्रॉम फॉर एप्लीकेशन में ऐड हो जाएगी। आपकी दूसरी इनकम भी है, टोटल आपकी 80 लाख हो गई इनकम अवेलेबल फॉर एप्लीकेशन। अब आपने कितना खर्चा किया देखना पड़ेगा। वो यदि 85% के नीचे है आपका तो आपको फॉर्म नंबर 9 भी दे सकते हैं, फॉर्म नंबर 10 भी दे सकते हैं। यदि आप दोनों नहीं देना चाहते हैं तो आपका जो टैक्स रेट है अभी तक एओपी का था, लेकिन बिकॉज ऑफ अमेंडमेंट ये 30% टैक्स आ जाएगा। अभी यदि अमेंडमेंट के पहले की बात करते हैं तो एज एन एओपी आपका टैक्स लगेगा वो सरप्लस के ऊपर में, लेकिन आफ्टर अमेंडमेंट यदि पास हो जाएगा तो 100 फीट में बीबीआई के हिसाब से 30% पर टैक्स लगेगा।
नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन ले सर, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पढ़ूं?
हाँ जरूर।
A trust accumulating corpus fund over the several years and expended in building Dharamsala. The same has been shown under capital work in progress. In current year, the building has been completed and transferred to fixed assets. The amount expended over the several year has not shown as application of fund in income tax return. Can depreciation can be claimed from the current year? Number one. Number two, whether it was mistake to not shown the amount invested in building every year as application of fund in respective annual return. What could be the best option that assessee should opt for?
देखिए आपके क्वेश्चन से जो मुझे लग रहा है कि आपका जो इन्वेस्टमेंट हुआ है वो कॉर्पस से हुआ है, इनकम से नहीं हुआ है, ठीक है। यदि कॉर्पस से हुआ है तो अभी लास्ट 3 साल का दिया है कि अगर आप भरते तो कॉर्पस के इन्वेस्टमेंट को एप्लीकेशन लेते ही नहीं वो लोग। यदि आप दिखा भी देते तो इनकम वाला कई इन्वेस्टमेंट को वो लोग एप्लीकेशन मानते हैं, ठीक है। जो एक्ट में बाद में चेंज आया है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिस में आईटीआर 7 में 2-3 साल से चेंज आ गया था, ठीक है। तो बेसिकली कॉर्पस ये इनकम से आपका धर्मशाला नहीं बनी है और आपकी कॉर्पस से बनी है बोल के एप्लीकेशन का इसमें हिसाब नहीं आ रहा है। एप्लीकेशन करने से एक लिटिगेशन आता है और एनजीओ में हम लोग लिटिगेशन में नहीं जाना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि एनजीओ में नॉर्मल के लिए पैसा नहीं होता, प्रोग्राम के लिए, तो कोई भी लिटिगेशन में अपने नहीं जाना चाहते हैं वहां पर, ठीक है। अब आपकी बात आ रही है कि आपको डेप्रिसिएशन मिलेगा क्या। तो जो सेक्शन 11(6) में जो अमेंडमेंट आया है वो बहुत क्लियर है। यदि वो शेयर जो एसेट है वो एप्लीकेशन के हिसाब से आपने क्लेम नहीं किया है तो आपका डेप्रिसिएशन आप ले सकते हैं, ठीक है। तो इस केस में आपने एप्लीकेशन के हिसाब से क्लेम नहीं किया है तो उसका आप डेप्रिसिएशन ले सकते हैं। लेकिन वो सेक्शन 11(6) जो बोल रहा है एट द टाइम ऑफ कंप्यूटिंग इनकम बोल रहा है, नॉट एज एन एप्लीकेशन। आप उस एसेट से धर्मशाला से जो आपकी रेंटल इनकम आएगी सपोज, उसको कंप्यूट करने के लिए आप उसका डेप्रिसिएशन क्लेम कर सकते हैं, ठीक है।
सर आप लोग रेंटल इनकम इसमें नहीं लेते हैं, इसको सर डोनेशन बोल के जो पैसा आता है
वो चीज वो अपनी प्रैक्टिस में दूसरी आ रही है, लेकिन बेसिकली इनकम फ्रॉम ट्रस्ट प्रॉपर्टी तो रेंटल होने से आएगी, ठीक है। डोनेशन होने से तो फिर नहीं आ रही है, वो तो सेपरेट हेड में इनका वॉलंटरी कंट्रीब्यूशन हिसाब से उसकी इनकम टैक्स जा रही है। लेकिन एज बिकॉज अमेंडमेंट बोल रहा है कि कैश बेसिस अकाउंटिंग होगा आपका, प्रपोज अमेंडमेंट बोल रहा है, तो उसमें डेप्रिसिएशन को लोग नहीं पकड़ेंगे।
तो सर हम डेप्रिसिएशन क्लेम करने तो मेरे को कोई तुक नहीं है फिर।
मेरे ख्याल से अमेंडमेंट यदि पास ऑन हो जा रहा है, पास हो जाता है एंड वहां पर कैश बेसिस अकाउंटिंग लोग बोल दे रहे हैं, ठीक है, तो उसमें डेप्रिसिएशन क्लेम करना मेरे ख्याल से थोड़ा डाउटफुल रहेगा। सुशील भैया थोड़ा ऐड कर सकते हैं इसमें, लेकिन कैश बेसिस ऑफ अकाउंटिंग में थोड़ा सा मुझे लग रहा है कि डेप्रिसिएशन
तो मेरे को तो नुकसान हो गया, एप्लीकेशन में भी नहीं है, डेप्रिसिएशन भी नहीं मिला मेरे को।
देखिए आपका यदि एग्रेसिव प्लानिंग करेंगे ना आप तो इनकम से आप लेस कर सकते हैं, इनकम से माने एग्रेसिव प्लानिंग करेंगे। हम लोग एनजीओ को लेकिन एडवाइस नहीं करते कभी, तो एनजीओ के पास में कोई लिटिगेशन का फंड नहीं होता है।
मेरा व्यू इसमें यह है कि डिप्रिसिएशन मिलना चाहिए, इसलिए कि डिप्रिसिएशन में क्या है, दिस इज आल्सो कैश, नॉट एक्सपेंडिचर, कैपिटल एक्सपेंस नॉट डेबिटेड, क्लेम इन 1 year but in different years. So
अब बेसिकली जब भी हम लोग बैलेंस शीट वगैरह बनाते हैं तो नॉन कैश एक्सपेंडिचर बोलते हैं डेप्रिसिएशन को,
बोलते हैं जनरली, इन कॉलोक्वियल टर्म्स बोलते हैं, लेकिन एक्चुअली है भी कैश ही है। That view of matter can be taken.
हाँ, माने वही एनजीओ के एग्रेसिव कितना एग्रेसिव एनजीओ पर डिपेंड करेगा।
हाँ।
और तो बोथ द व्यूज कैन बी टेकन इसमें जो है, लेकिन थोड़ा सा अमेंडमेंट आने के बाद थोड़ा सा दिक्कत हो गया, जो प्रपोज्ड अमेंडमेंट है उसका।
ठीक है सर, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन लिया जाए।
जरूर।
A society has been registered under section 12A and got 80G registration. He has also registered under section 1023C. Now SSC want to cancel registration under section 1023C because he has exceeded the contribution of 5 crore rupees. The 5 crore amendment has been effective from 1st April 2021. Now they are getting more amount of donation. So they want to surrender it 1023C and want to continue with 80G. The issue is,
हाँ, यहाँ समझ लेता हूँ मैं।
हाँ सर,
आपने जो रिन्यूअल अप्लाई किया था,
हाँ
अभी 1/4/21 के बाद से जो रिन्यूअल अप्लाई हुआ था,
हाँ
उस टाइम में आपने क्या किया था?
सर उस समय ऑलरेडी सर 10 GB था और सर वो 1023 अप्लाई कर दिया था और उसका सर कंफर्म हो गया सितंबर।
ये नया केस है क्या? नया केस है कि पुराना केस है ये?
सर नया केस है सर, इस ईयर का, करंट ईयर का।
दैट मींस आपका 12 में रजिस्टर आपका नहीं था, 12 में रजिस्टर नहीं था आपका?
नहीं सर, पुराना है, रजिस्ट्रेशन पुराना है।
दैट मींस आपका 12 का रजिस्ट्रेशन चल रहा था और आपका टोटल एक्टिविटी को आप 12 में क्लेम कर रहे थे आईटीआर में।
राइट सर,
आप तो 12 का बेनिफिट ले रहे थे ना, तो दैट मींस योर एनजीओ वाज क्लेमिंग फॉलिंग अंडर सेक्शन 12A, ठीक है? और आपको रिन्यूअल अप्लाई करना था 12AB में, ठीक है? तो आपने रिन्यूअल को 12AB में अप्लाई किया था क्या 1/4/21 से कि नहीं किया था?
सर नहीं किया था उस समय,
नहीं किया था। तो दैट मींस आपका 1/4/21 से जो 31 मार्च तक अभी तक के टाइम है, उसमें आपने कोई फॉर्म जमा नहीं किया आज के दिन, ठीक है? तो आपका पुराना 12A का रजिस्ट्रेशन वो स्टे कर रहा है, और आपका रिन्यूअल का एप्लीकेशन जो रिफ्रेश रजिस्ट्रेशन है वो आपने अभी तक फाइल नहीं किया है। यदि फाइल नहीं किया है तो आप इसको इस टाइम में 1023 के अप्रूवल में जाना चाहेंगे तो आपका प्रोविजनल अप्रूवल में जाना पड़ेगा, जो 3 साल का होता है, और फिर उसको यदि आपका 12A को करेंगे तो 5 साल का आपको मिल जाएगा बिना इंक्वायरी, ठीक है? वो आपका ऑप्शन है, एज बिकॉज आपने 1/4/21 के बाद अपनी एप्लीकेशन फाइल नहीं किया आज तक, ठीक है? तो और आप 1023 में जाना चाहते हैं तो फिर आपको नया अप्लाई करना पड़ेगा, प्रोविजनल एप्लीकेशन अप्लाई करना पड़ेगा।
सर मेरे को 1023 से कैंसिल करना है सर, क्योंकि 5 करोड़ की ऊपर में इसमें लेने को है।
कहां से तो समझ नहीं आया। आप बोले लास्ट ईयर तो आपका 12A था आपका, तो पहले
12 था, मैंने गलती से 1023 से में कर दिया।
कब किया
ये सर? हमने किया था जुलाई महीने में और सितंबर में मेरा कॉल आउट हो गया नंबर।
मैंने मार्च 21 के पहले कर दिया था क्या?
मार्च 21 के बाद किए थे सर
वो, इस नया स्कीम में किया, नया स्कीम?
हाँ, नया स्कीम में किए थे।
तो नया स्कीम में 12A रहते हुए 1023 से किया आपने?
हाँ सर, ये कर दिया।
और प्रोविजनल अप्लाई किया?
हाँ सर,
और मिल भी गया?
हाँ मिल गया सर।
अब दिक्कत हो गई। यदि
अब मेरे को सर कैंसिलेशन के लिए कोई फॉर्म अवेलेबल नहीं है साइट में।
नहीं, कैंसिलेशन का तो कोई इनकम टैक्स में नियम ही नहीं है। इवन टाटा ट्रस्ट भी अपने रजिस्ट्रेशन कैंसिल कराना चाह रहे थे, तो बोले कैंसिलेशन नहीं होगा, आपका सरेंडर नहीं होगा, कैंसिल होगा। कैंसिल होने से आपका तो टैक्स लग जाएगा 150 का। तो अपने वर्ड कैंसिल तो यूज ही नहीं कर सकते हैं यहाँ पर, ठीक है?
सरेंडर कैसे किया जाए?
मैंने सरेंडर कैसे किया जाए, और सरेंडर करने का कोई प्रोविजन नहीं है इनकम टैक्स में, ठीक है? आपके केस में हम जो देख रहे हैं कि आपका 12A पहले का था, ठीक है? और आपने उसको फ्रेश नहीं कराया, आपने 1023 का ले लिया, ठीक है? और आपके पास में टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लम आ गई, एक्ट में इसका सरेंडर का कोई प्रोविजन नहीं है। सीआईटी को आपको लिखना पड़ेगा, सीआईटी बंदौर को जो डील कर रहा है, कि ऐसे हमारा 12, लेकिन आपका पहले 12A का लिया हुआ था ना?
हाँ, 12 और 80G पुराना है सर मेरा।
पुराना ही है, तो आपको बोलना पड़ेगा कि मेरा टिक गलती से दूसरा टिक हो गया था, कि फॉर्म तो एक ही था 10A, तो भाई पूरी हमने दूसरा टिक लगा दिया, ये लगाना था हमको ऊपर का टिक, तो हमारी क्रिटिकल मिस्टेक है, इसको मैं रेक्टिफाई करना चाहता हूँ। और करके आप एक बार उसको फाइल करिए।
ओके सर।
तो फॉर्म तो रहेगा नहीं, लेकिन वही उसी ग्राउंड में आपको आगे बढ़ना पड़ेगा।
ओके सर। सर नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन लिया जाए?
हाँ जरूर।
A public charitable trust registered with West Bengal Society Registration Act, along with 12A and 80G under the Income Tax Act, having registration more than 3 years, covering all the criteria of CSR activity in their memorandum. What conditions should society need to adhere with to take CSR fund from the corporate under CSR? Number 1. Number 2, how they should get themselves registered under Niti Aayog. What formality they have to comply with to take foreign donation?
ये क्वेश्चन है, ये पूरा एक वो है, तो मैं ब्रीफली बता देता हूँ मैं, ठीक है? मैंने CSR के लिए आपके मेमोरेंडम में ऑब्जेक्ट करने से नहीं होगा। आपको 3 साल का काम करना पड़ेगा इस एरिया में जिसके लिए आप फंड लेना चाहते हैं।
राइट सर।
सपोज आपके मेमोरेंडम में एजुकेशन लिखा हुआ, लेकिन आपने एजुकेशन काम ही नहीं किया, आप हेल्थ के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, और हेल्थ भी आपके मेमोरेंडम में है, तो जिस एक्टिविटी में मोर देन 3 इयर्स आपने काम किया है और आपका एक्सपर्टीज है, एंड आपका 12 एन एटीजी है, 1023 में नहीं मिलता है CSR का पैसा, आपका 12 एन एटीजी है, मोर देन 3 इयर्स है, और आप सोसाइटी, ट्रस्ट एंड सेक्शन कंपनी में से एक फॉल करते हैं, तो आपकी CSR की एलिजिबिलिटी बनती है। आपको CSR 1 फॉर्म फिलअप करके MCA से आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन करना पड़ेगा, ठीक है, जो कि ऑनलाइन आप फिलअप करेंगे, आपको 1 सेकंड में आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन मिल जाता है, बहुत छोटा सा फॉर्म है। तो फर्स्ट आप देख लीजिए कि जिस एक्टिविटी के लिए आप फंड लेना चाहते हैं वो शेड्यूल 7 में है CSR के, अगर CSR के शेड्यूल 7 में नहीं है तो भी आपको फायदा नहीं है। तो CSR के शेड्यूल 7 में है, आप उसमें 3 साल काम कर चुके हैं, 3 साल काम कर चुके हैं माने आपकी तो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन 3 साल पुरानी हो गई, ठीक है, आपका 12 एन एटीजी है, अगर ये तीनों कंडीशन फुलफिल करती है, CSR 1 फिलअप करिए, CSR 1 ले लीजिए, आप CSR के लिए एलिजिबल हो गए, नाउ यू कैन अप्रोच फॉर CSR फंडिंग, ठीक है। सेकंड आपका सवाल था नीति आयोग का।
हाँ सर।
सेकंड सवाल जो नीति आयोग का था, ये मैंने जब अपना प्रेजेंटेशन में दिया था उसमें मैंने कहा था कि जहां पर FCRA का रजिस्ट्रेशन कराने चाहते हैं या जहां पर गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट आपको लेना चाहते हैं, कोई जिसके लिए इनकम टैक्स भी जरूरी कर दिया है, आपको नीति आयोग के डिपार्टमेंट के, तो वहां पर एक पोर्टल है NGO दर्पण, वहां जाकर आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन कराना पड़ता है, एंड वहां रजिस्ट्रेशन करने के बाद में आपको एक नंबर मिल जाएगा, एंड वो आपके जितने भी फ्यूचर कॉरेस्पॉन्डेंस में आपको नीति आयोग का NGO दर्पण का पोर्टल का रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर देना पड़ेगा, एंड वो आपके FCRA रजिस्ट्रेशन में लगता है और गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट के भी लगता है, ठीक है। और जो फॉरेन फंड की आप बात कर रहे हैं, इसमें वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि आप जो पैसा ले रहे हैं वो फॉरेन कंट्रीब्यूशन के डिफिनेशन में आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है। फर्स्ट तो वो अपने को समझना पड़ता है कि इसके लिए अलग से एक्ट है, फॉरेन कंट्रीब्यूशन रेगुलेशन एक्ट अपने, और इसमें सोर्स इंपॉर्टेंट होता है, करेंसी इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं होती है। तो आपके कोई NRI दोस्त लंदन में रह रहे हैं और वहां से आपको डॉलर में पैसा भेज रहे हैं और वो स्टिल इंडियन पासपोर्ट होल्ड करते हैं, तो ये इंडियन फंड ही है, ये FCRA में नहीं आता है, कारण कि सोर्स आपका इंडियन है, सोर्स आपका फॉरेन नहीं है। ऑन द अदर हैंड आपके एक फॉरेनर दोस्त है, इंडिया में आए हुए हैं और जाते समय उनके पास में 1000 रुपया बच गया एंड वो 1000 रुपया इस NGO को देना चाहते हैं, तो एज बिकॉज देने वाला सोर्स फॉरेनर है, फॉरेन सिटीजन है, तो ये पैसा FCRA में आता है। तो कोई भी फॉरेन सोर्स का पैसा, नॉट कि बाहर का पैसा, कोई भी फॉरेन कंट्री सोर्स का पैसा है, वो यदि आप लेना चाहेंगे तो इसके पहले आपको FCRA में अपना रजिस्ट्रेशन कराना पड़ेगा, एंड वो रजिस्ट्रेशन भी 2 प्रकार के होते हैं, प्रायर रजिस्ट्रेशन परमिशन और एक 5 ईयर रजिस्ट्रेशन, जैसे इनकम टैक्स में होता है। तो बिना रजिस्ट्रेशन के आप FCRA का पैसा पहले नहीं ले सकते। इसके प्रोसेस में नहीं जाऊंगा, बहुत बड़ा प्रोसेस है, लेकिन रिक्वायरमेंट है कि यदि आप बाहर के सोर्स से, नॉट कि आपको अंडरस्टैंड करना पड़ेगा कि आपका पैसा हो सकता है कि बाहर का नहीं भी हो, आपको लग रहा है बाहर का है लेकिन FCRA में नहीं फॉल करता है, कि उन्होंने जैसे वर्ल्ड बैंक का पैसा है, IMF का पैसा है, ये फॉरेन सोर्स के डिफरेंसेस उन्होंने आउट कर रखा है 128 इंस्टीट्यूशन को, ठीक है। तो बेसिकली आपको देखना पड़ेगा कि ये बाहर के सोर्स के डिफरेंस में आ रहे हैं, तब वो पैसा आप बिना FCRA के रजिस्ट्रेशन के नहीं ले सकते।
Shyam, any question in the chat box, or any of the participants want to raise any question?
There are 2 questions, but if you want, we can ask people to raise their hand. We can unmute them.
Yes, we can. Any from the participant who want to raise any question? Please raise your hand.
I have Mr. Just a second. Mr. Chakradhar, are you there? Please unmute. Mr. Chakradhar Pingale.
Yes, Mr. Chakradhar Pingle.
Yes.
Sir, please raise your question.
Okay, sir. As you had mentioned earlier, for the previous year, a lot of assessors have received the notice because the audit report was not filed prior to 1 month from the date of return.
Yeah.
So, is there any way out to mitigate those instances?
Yeah, in such cases, this power of condonation was with the severity, and severity through a circular has given this power to the relevant CIT. So if the delay is not more than 365 days, and in your case, I think the delay must be less than 30 days, because in most of the cases, the 10B was uploaded before the filing of return. So what we advise, you submit the condonation petition citing that circular. At the same time, you should also apply for file an appeal, because there is a Calcutta High Court judgment which says if the compliances was done before making the assessment, then for such technical violation, the assessor should not be penalized only because of delay in submission of return. Because at the time of making assessment, the 10B was uploaded even before filing of the return. But I think you should approach both way. You should submit your condonation petition to the relevant CIT. If just condonation petition is granted, then you just file 154 and withdraw the appeal. If the condonation is not being granted, then you can go ahead with your appeal.
Sir, can you please cite the your judgment?
I will share through email. You can
Okay,
say.
sir. Okay.
Mr. Anurag Sharma.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Yes,
sir. I just want to ask two questions. One is that we have applied for a renewal.
Mhm.
We are an existing registration under 12A and 80G.
Mhm.
We applied for a 5-year renewal and they have given us a provisional registration for 5 years.
For 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the certificate, it is clearly mentioned for provisional registration.
No. That certificate they are saying provisional. That might be 10 AC also you have received, form number 10 AC.
Yes.
That also says provisional.
Yes.
The important is 5 years, because the word they are saying provisional, because CIT has a power to cancel any 10 AC if the details submitted in form number 10A is found to be inaccurate. Okay. But for all practical purposes, it is not a provisional registration. It is a 5-year registration. If your certificate was only for 3 years, then it could have been a provisional registration. So the terminology used by them is creating confusion. But as you said, the registration is granted for 5 years, both for 12A and 80Z. I think there is no point for worry. You've been granted a normal registration for 5 years.
Thank you. Another question I have, can we follow the hybrid system of accounting for expenses cash basis and for grants which are spanning for 2 years, financial years, as accrual basis?
I think this we will deal upon with when we deal the amendment. So it is more easy to then understand cash basis, hybrid system, and those things.
Ketan ji has raised a question in chat box.
Before that, we have Rajesh Singhania ji. I've unmuted him. Rajesh ji.
Rajesh ji, please unmute yourself.
Rajesh ji. Okay, he is not responding. Ketan ji.
Ketan ji, please unmute yourself. उनका क्वेश्चन ले लो.
केतन जी को अनम्यूट कर दिया मैंने. केतन जी.
Ketan ji, please raise your question.
I'll read his question. While filing Form 10B revised, wrong format of ARN is coming. How to solve this problem? Secondly, return has already been filed, but 10B is pending. What is the remedy?
10B यदि अभी तक फाइल नहीं हुआ और ITR जमा हो गया है, माने यदि 15 फरवरी के पहले ये प्रश्न आता है तो ITR के बाद भी हम 10B जमा करा देते हैं. माने कि 15 फरवरी तक 10B जमा करने की टाइम थी, लेकिन आज तो उनको 10B तो जमा करना ही पड़ेगा एंड फिर कंडोनेशन वगैरह के लिए फाइल करना पड़ेगा, जो मैंने पहले कहा बेसिकली.
अच्छा, उसमें सर एक एरर आ रहा है, उसमें एक एरर आ रहा है रॉन्ग.
देखना पड़ेगा, ये तो ऑपरेशनल देखना पड़ेगा, लेकिन जो है वो यदि उनका 10B जमा नहीं किए हैं तो अभी भी जमा कर दें. एंड इन केस उनका एस्टिमेट में दिक्कत आएगी तो कंडोनेशन को अभी कंडोनेशन फाइल भी कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज़ दे नो दे हैव मेड मिस्टेक. तो कंडोनेशन तो अभी फाइल कर दें, बेटर रहेगा.
ओके. रूबी भालोटिया जी का एक क्वेश्चन है. रूबी भालोटिया जी का, व्हाट इफ द रजिस्टर्ड ट्रस्ट डज नॉट टेक रजिस्ट्रेशन इन न्यू रिजिम?
तो वो अनरजिस्टर्ड ट्रस्ट हो जाएगी अंडर इनकम टैक्स. नॉर्मल हेड्स ऑफ टैक्सेशन लगेंगे उसको, जो नॉर्मल कंप्रेशन होता है, और उसकी जो टैक्सेशन आए थे वैसे उसको देनी पड़ेगी.
एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन है मिस्टर प्रंजल बैनर्जी का. माय क्लाइंट अप्लाइड फॉर फॉर्म 10A एंड गॉट प्रोविजनल रजिस्ट्रेशन. नाउ व्हाट टू डू?
नहीं, प्रोविजनल जैसे पहले केस था, वो लोग प्रोविजनल बोल रहे हैं लेकिन देते हैं 5 साल का है. यदि 5 साल का मिल गया, देयर इज नो पॉइंट फॉर वरी. उनका रजिस्ट्रेशन 5 इयर्स का ही है. और यदि प्रोविजनल वर्ड और सही, बहुत केस में क्या हुआ है कि उन्होंने सबसेक्शन टिक करने में गलती कर दिया था, तो 5 साल की जगह 3 साल का मिल गया. उनको मिलना था 5 साल का, लेकिन बिकॉज ऑफ रॉन्ग टिकिंग ऑफ टिक उनको 3 साल का मिल गया है. उसके केसेस में हम लोग वही एडवाइस कर रहे हैं कि CIT बेंगलोर को लिखने के लिए कि हमारी पुरानी रजिस्टर्ड ट्रस्ट है, ये हमने 10A फॉर्म जमा किया था, लेकिन बाई चूजिंग द रॉन्ग सबसेक्शन ये हमारी गलती हो गई है, तो हमारा ये सरेंडर करके आप दूसरा हमको सर्टिफिकेट इशू करें.
राजेश जी का क्वेश्चन ले लो, वो अभी डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए थे.
नहीं, वो प्रिंजल जी बोल रहे हैं वो उनका 3 साल का ही था रजिस्ट्रेशन, उनमें देखा हुआ है 3 साल के लिए, 5 साल के लिए नहीं.
मतलब तो इसका मतलब क्या है कि उनका यदि वो पुरानी रजिस्टर्ड ट्रस्ट है उनकी 12A वाली, तो उनका सब सेक्शन चूज करने में गलती हुई है वहां पर. यदि चूज करने में भी गलती नहीं हुई है तो उनका रेक्टिफिकेशन केस बनता है 154 में अप्लाई कर दें, तो 154 ही बन जाएगा पूरा. CIT बेंगलोर में अप्लाई करना पड़ेगा, इसकी सेंट्रल बॉडी CIT बेंगलोर ही है इसकी.
Good evening,
Rajesh
sir.
ji, please raise your question.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, what are the limits for accepting cash donation by Section 8 company?
देखिए कैश डोनेशन का एटीजी में जाना पड़ेगा आपको। सेक्शन 8 वो ट्रस्ट और सोसाइटी और सबके लिए की है, ठीक है। तो आप कैश डोनेशन रिसीव करने में आपको दिक्कत नहीं है, आप एटीजी किसको दे पाएंगे उसकी बात आएगी,
ओके
ठीक है। तो एटीजी अगर 2000 से अधिक का कैश डोनेशन आप लेते हैं जहां पर मोर देन 2000 है, तो उसको आप एटीजी का बेनिफिट नहीं दे पाएंगे।
नहीं दे पाएंगे सर।
सेकेंडली, यदि कैश डोनेशन है तो आपको डिटेल्स पर्टिकुलर यदि आप नहीं रख पा रहे हैं कोई भी कारण से, यदि कैश आप बोल रहे हैं तो दैट मींस आपका सोर्स आपको मालूम नहीं भी रह सकता है, आपको एनोनिमस डोनेशन में नहीं चला जाएगा।
ओके
यदि एनोनिमस डोनेशन में चला जाएगा तो फिर वहां पर आपको टैक्स जो लिमिट है 5% और 1 लाख की, उससे अधिक यदि हो जाएगा। तो जब भी कैश डोनेशन होता है तो आईटी लोग टेंड टू फाइंड आउट किसका सोर्स क्या है,
राइट।
वेदर इट इज एनोनिमस डोनेशन और नॉट।
अब ऐसे कोई किसी कंपनी ने फंड रेजिंग कैंप लगाया कोई चैरिटेबल एक्टिविटी करते वक्त, तो वहां पे लोग आकर के 500,000 रुपए दे जाते हैं, तो उनसे उनका आधार या पैन भी लेना होगा हमें।
नहीं, आधार पैन के लिए बोला नहीं है यहाँ पर इनकम टैक्स में, लेकिन आप
बोला
नेम
उसमें
एड्रेस तो जरूरी है, नेम एड्रेस जरूरी है। और आप एटीजी का बेनिफिट यदि उनको देना चाहते हैं उनको, तब आपको आधार पैन कार्ड कुछ नहीं, तो आपको उसका जब फॉर्म फिलअप करने जाएंगे 10BD तो नहीं कर पाएंगे।
हाँ वही 10BD के लिए 10BD।
हाँ, तो आपको लेना पड़ेगा, तो उनका लेना पड़ेगा।
अच्छा
एनोनिमस डोनेशन जो आता है 5% से ऊपर, जैसे 5% तक तो ठीक है, लेकिन मान लीजिए कि वो लाख रुपए से अगर ऊपर चला जाता है, नॉर्मली मिशनरीज वगैरह के अंदर में तो लाख रुपए के ऊपर वो लोग जाकर मान्य मिशनरी के ऊपर, जैसे सपोज टेरेसा चर्च के ऊपर में जाकर चढ़ा देते हैं कई लोग आकर, तो वो क्या
यदि ये रिलीजियस ट्रस्ट है तब तो एनोनिमस डोनेशन चैप्टर लगता नहीं है, वो एनोनिमस कोई पूरा खर्चा कर दें 85%, कोई डिटेल्स रखने की दरकार नहीं है। ये अगर चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट है और 1 लाख के ऊपर से उनको पैसा मिल गया, एनोनिमस डोनेशन मिल गया, तो 30% टैक्स देना पड़ेगा उसको।
तो नॉर्मली ये सब चैरिटेबल ही रहती है, रिलीजियस तो रहती नहीं है।
मैक्सिमम रिलीजियस रहती है, मैक्सिमम जो है ना रिलीजियस ट्रस्ट को ही होता है ये काम। जब मंदिर में आप जाते हैं, चढ़ाते हैं बिना कोई देखे हुए,
लाइक मिशनरीज वगैरह जो है वो सब चैरिटेबल है,
तब तो आपको एनोनिमस का चैप्टर लग जाएगा। इफ मोर देन 1 लाख और 5% के अधिक आपका पैसा जमा हो रहा है, जिसका कि आप सोर्स नहीं बता पा रहे हैं, नेम एड्रेस कुछ नहीं बता पा रहे हैं, तो आपको 30% टैक्स आपको देना पड़ेगा।
सर सपोज अगर एटीजी का बेनिफिट नहीं देना हमें,
एटीजी का दे नहीं पा रहा है, कोई नाम ही नहीं है उसका।
हाँ अगर नहीं
एटीजी तो देना ही नहीं है उसमें एटीजी के बदले, लेकिन डोनेशन जो आ रहा है वो मेरा विदिन 5% की लिमिट में ही है मेरा, क्योंकि मेरा मान लीजिए करोड़ों में डोनेशन आ रहा है।
तब कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, तब कोई दिक्कत नहीं।
और नहीं वो लिमिट मेरी 5% के अंदर में आ रहा है, लेकिन 1 लाख के ऊपर जा रहा है।
ना वो तो विचर जाहिर है ना, विचर जाहिर है, हाँ विचर जाहिर है, इससे दिक्कत नहीं है। अब जो आपका एग्जाम लिमिट में आ गया ना, बस आपको 11 में खर्चा करना है 85%।
वो ठीक है
सर। अगर नेम एंड एड्रेस ले रहे हैं कैश डोनर का तो दैट विल सफाइस।
हाँ, एटीजी आप नहीं दे पाएंगे, लेकिन आप एनोनिमस डोनेशन से बच सकते हैं। हालांकि एनोनिमस डोनेशन के लिए इनको पर्टिकुलर टू बी प्रिस्क्राइब बोले थे, आज तक प्रिस्क्राइब किए नहीं है।
ओके,
तो वो थोड़ा सा गैप है यहाँ पर।
तो सर नेम एंड एड्रेस रियल लाइफ में देखा जाए तो कोई भी फर्जी भी डाल सकता है।
ना फर्जी डालने से तो फिर वही हो गया ना कि आपने उसको बिल्टअप किया है, बिल्टअप वाला कोई केस नहीं चलेगा। आप जब नेम एड्रेस बोल रहे हैं तो आप प्रूफ कर पा रहे हैं उस नेम एड्रेस में वो आदमी है।
ओके सर, थैंक यू सर।
सर एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन है, सेक्शन 8 कंपनी इनकॉर्पोरेटेड इन Feb 22 when to make application to income tax, please advise।
कब इनकॉर्पोरेट हुई है उनकी?
Feb अभी जस्ट हुई है, इस महीना में ही इनकॉर्पोरेट।
मेरे ख्याल से तुरंत अप्लाई कर दें, कारण कि ये विंडो इसी साल है। नॉर्मली जो नया रजिस्ट्रेशन का विंडो आया है, आपको पहले क्या था, जिस साल अप्लाई करते थे उस साल आपको 12 का बेनिफिट मिल जाता था। नया लो में बोल दिया कि 1 मंथ प्रायर टू द प्रीवियस ईयर करना पड़ेगा। तो दैट मींस आप नेक्स्ट ईयर का भी बेनिफिट लेना चाहेंगे तो आपको 28 फरवरी के पहले जमा करना है, मैंने 10 है, तब आपको नेक्स्ट ईयर भी मिलेगा। इस साल तो मिलेगा ही नहीं, नेक्स्ट ईयर भी नहीं मिलेगा। लेकिन इस फाइनेंशियल ईयर के लिए रूल्स के माध्यम से इन्होंने इस साल का जमा किया को इस साल से दे रहे हैं लोग, तो दे शुड टेक अ चांस बाय सबमिटिंग देयर रिटर्न पहले इसी साल में 28 मार्च, फरवरी तो निकल गया, आज निकल जा रहा है उनका, लेकिन मार्च के पहले जमा कर दें तो एटलीस्ट रूल्स के हिसाब से जो इस साल के लिए विंडो है खाली वो सब्सिक्वेंट के लिए नहीं मिलेगी, तो जरूर जमा कर दें। सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर से 1 महीना प्रायर टू प्रीवियस ईयर देना पड़ेगा, माने 1 साल आपको वेट करना पड़ेगा। तो अब अपने अमेंडमेंट में चलें।
यस सर।
मेरा आ रहा है कि नहीं?
नहीं सर अभी नहीं आया।
क्यों नहीं आया? स्क्रीन शेयर हो गया मैं।
सर आ रहा है,
अब आया।
Now, during this session, we shall be discussing the key proposed amendments. एंड ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है, कारण कि इस बार के अमेंडमेंट जो है ना, ये बहुत हुए हैं इस बार, एंड these have an impact on day-to-day compliances also. So key proposed amendments I have classified into 4 or 5 different blocks. One block is cancellation power may lead to disruption. माने cancellation के जो specified reasons हैं जिसके ऊपर में cancellation हो सकता है, that has been broadened, and that may lead to disruption, and this has done by modifying section 12A, B4 and B5. We will deal these amendments separately again. Second block of amendment is bringing consistency into regime. We have already understand कि 1023C का एक mechanism चलता है and 11, 12, 13 का एक mechanism चलता है. 1023C में भी 2 केस है, नॉन अप्रूवल एंड अप्रूवल. तो अप्रूवल वाले कैटेगरी के जो 1023C के हैं और 12, 11, 1, 13 वाले हैं, इसमें जो भी डिस्पैरिटी थी, दिस बजट ने उसको गैप को कमती करने की चेष्टा की है. पूरा तो अभी खत्म नहीं हुआ है, लेकिन दे हैव ट्राइड टू मिनिमाइज द गैप कि दोनों के कंप्लायंस एक सी हो. मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आया कि अगर दोनों को एक ही करना चाहते थे, दे कुड हैव इजीली सेड कि एक ही रिजाइन लगेगा. आप 1023C की दरकार नहीं, आप 12A में आ जाओ, बहुत इजी उनके लिए होता है. इंस्टेड ऑफ ब्रिंगिंग अ कंसिस्टेंसी एंड उसके बाद भी कुछ फाक रख दिए, दे शुड हैव इजीली सेड कि अब 12A भी लगेगा, आप सब कन्वर्ट हो जाओ इसमें. लेकिन कोई विजडम में वो लोग कर रहे हैं कि ये लोग दोनों को एट पार लाने की चेष्टा कर रहे हैं. एंड इसके लिए दैट्स व्हाई जो काफी अमेंडमेंट हुए हैं जो कि 12AB एंड उसकी इनकंसिस्टेंसी थी, उनको लोग ठीक कर रहे हैं. एंड जो भी प्रपोज्ड अमेंडमेंट नए हुए हैं 12AB के लिए, वो सिमिलर अमेंडमेंट 1023C के लिए भी हुए हैं. तो बोलकर नंबर ऑफ अमेंडमेंट अपने को ज्यादा लग रहे हैं, कारण कि जो अमेंडमेंट 12AB में है वो सेम रिपीट हुए हैं 1023C के. तो एक अमेंडमेंट 2 बार आ रहा है उनका. So that is the reason number of amendments have become in numbers more. The third is modification in applicable regulation. And isme what I understand is they have first time introduced the requirement of maintaining books of account. They have said cash basis accounting should be used for application, determining the amount of application. And they have said accumulation amount जो 5 साल का था वो 6 साल में होगा, और violations के हिसाब से taxability कैसे कैसे आएगी. Again, they have made a very clear set of recommendations in case of non-compliances on what amount you have to pay tax, at what rate you have to pay tax, and किसी भी type की subjectivity को उन्होंने दूर करने की चेष्टा की. And here they have included the benefit to a specified person, section 13(1)(c) था, उसको उन्होंने amend किया है, and they have also brought a penalty under section 271 AAF. Then they have brought amendment in section 13(1)(d), the non-compliance of investment other than a specified amount. Then they have make a special provision for computing income on specified non-violation. Just first session में we have discussed कि उन्होंने 10B submit नहीं किया timely, and 10B नहीं submit करने से entire income पर tax लग रहा था government. So now by providing section 1310, in such cases also a separate mechanism to compute income has been given now. कि पहले तो आपको एप्लीकेशन एकदम बाद नहीं मिल रहा था, अब नई मैकेनिज्म में उन सच केसेस में भी जहां पर टेक्निकल वायलेशन है वहां पर थोड़ी रिलीफ मिली है. एंड स्पेशल टैक्स रेट एज पर 115 BBI, द पॉइंट वी आर डिस्कसिंग कि जो इनकम अवेलेबल फॉर एप्लीकेशन नहीं है एंड जो एज एन AOP टैक्स हो रहा था, दैट मींस को 2.5 लाख का एग्जम्पशन मिल रहा था और स्लैब रेट में जा रहा था, उन सब पर नाउ अ न्यू सेक्शन 115 BBI हैज कम प्रोवाइडिंग 30% टैक्स रेट. And other proposed amendment जो है वो include कर रहा है treatment of voluntary contribution for renovation repairs of leased places notified under section 80G2B. इस section में जो donation मिल रहा है उसके लिए उन्होंने कुछ change किया है. We'll deal this separately. And increase in penalties for late filing of submission of return from 100 to 500 under section 270A. तो broadly ये 10 amendment हुए हैं इस proposed finance bill 22 से. And now एक amendment को हम अपने deal कर रहे हैं इसको. So first important amendment is provision for cancellation of registration or approval. So we all know section 12A, AA 4 and 5 जो था, they were providing the reasons for cancellations, and the reasons were very broad. Non-genuineness of activity, if your activity is not falling within your object, और आपने section 13 का violation किया है तो अदरवाइज ऑपरेशनल रीजंस के लिए कभी भी आपने बुक्स अकाउंट नहीं रखा है, उस सब के लिए कभी भी कैंसिलेशन नहीं होता था. बट नाउ दे हैव प्रोवाइडेड व्हाट आर द स्पेसिफाइड वायलेशन फॉर व्हिच द कैंसिलेशन प्रोसीडिंग्स कैन बी इनिशिएटेड. सो लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट आर दोज स्पेसिफाइड वायलेशन जो कि अपने को करने से कैंसिलेशन में अपने आ सकते हैं, एंड वेन टॉकिंग अबाउट कैंसिलेशन, तो कैंसिलेशन का वर्ड लिंक होता है 100% TD से, एग्रीगेटेड इनकम से। तो कैंसिलेशन वर्ड एनजीओ के लिए बहुत ही कॉस्ट वाला है, कॉस्टली है। सो एज पर प्रपोज्ड अमेंडमेंट, उन्होंने एक नॉन स्पेसिफिकेशन में कहा है कि इनकम फ्रॉम ट्रस्ट प्रॉपर्टी हैज बीन अप्लाइड अदर देन द ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ द ट्रस्ट। यदि आपकी इनकम ऑब्जेक्ट छोड़कर अप्लाई हो रही है तो आपका स्पेसिफाइड वायलेशन हो जाएगा और दैट विल बी सब्जेक्ट टू कैंसिलेशन प्रोसेस। However, in the earlier law, existing law, this was activities are not carried out in accordance with the object. उन्होंने जस्ट वर्डिंग को थोड़ा चेंज किया है, बट मीनिंग मोर लेस सेम आ रही है। बट आई अंडरस्टैंड द प्रपोज्ड मीनिंग हैज मच मोर वाइडर कवरेज। पहले था इफ इट इज नॉट अकॉर्डेंस विद योर ऑब्जेक्ट, और अब ये बोल रहे हैं अदर देन द ऑब्जेक्ट। इन्होंने ट्विस्ट किया वर्ड को। सेकेंड, इनकम फ्रॉम ट्रस्ट प्रॉपर्टी हेल्ड अंडर ट्रस्ट अप्लाइड फॉर प्राइवेट रिलीज पर्पसेस, जो कि पहले भी था, इसमें कोई इन्होंने चेंज नहीं किया है। अगेन, इनकम फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ एनी पर्टिकुलर रिलीजियस कम्युनिटी और कास्ट बाय अ चैरिटेबल इंस्टीट्यूशंस, ये पहले भी था, अभी भी है, कोई चेंज नहीं किया है। एक्टिविटीज कैरिड आर नॉट जेन्युइन, ये पहले भी था, अभी भी है। नॉन कंप्लायंस विद अदर लॉ, ये पहले भी था, अभी भी है। यहां तक कहीं कोई दिक्कत नहीं। खाली फर्स्ट में अदर देन ऑब्जेक्ट एंड नॉट इन अकॉर्डेंस विद ऑब्जेक्ट में जो टेक्निकल कवरेज बढ़ेगा या घटेगा, दैट इज द ओनली पॉइंट द चेंजेस हैज अकर्ड। नाउ अभी जो है एग्जिस्टिंग लॉ में 13(1)(c) का और 13(1)(d) का जो वायलेशन है, दैट विल आल्सो रिजल्ट इनटू कैंसिलेशन, बट देयर इज नो सिमिलर प्रोविजन हियर। तो वन मीनिंग ये भी आ रही है कि 13(1)(c) और 13(1)(d) के वायलेशंस में अब आपका कैंसिलेशन नहीं होगा, या वो चीज पहले में आएगी क्या, अदर देन ऑब्जेक्ट में आएगी क्या, ये एक सब्जेक्टिव इशू आ जाएगा। इसको छोड़ करके नाउ दे हैव इंक्लूडेड एडिशनल इश्यूज फॉर व्हिच द कैंसिलेशन प्रोसीडिंग्स कैन बी इनिशिएटेड, एंड दैट इज इनकम फ्रॉम प्रॉफिट एंड गेन्स फ्रॉम बिजनेस which is non-incidental to the attainment of main object. Again, they are saying कि no separate books of account is maintained. यदि आपका इनकम 11(4)(a) के हिसाब से आपको सेपरेट बुक्स रखनी चाहिए थी और आपने नहीं रखी, उस ग्राउंड में भी आपका कैंसिलेशन प्रोसीडिंग्स इनिशिएट हो सकता है। एंड मोस्ट वाइटल इज activities are not carried out in accordance with all or any of the conditions subject to which your trust was registered. तो इस बार की जब आपको 10AC फॉर्म मिला है, 10AC का ऑर्डर आया है, उसमें you find a number of conditions. Now cancellation says if any of those conditions are also not been satisfied or complied with, then also on those non-compliances also your registration can be or cancellation proceedings can be initiated. So we must know what are those conditions जो कि सेक्शन पहले में नहीं थी। तो इसको अपन देखते हैं। तो रजिस्ट्रेशन ग्रांटेड इन सेक्शन 12A in form number 10AC contains a number of conditions which are not in accordance with the conditions specified in section 11, 12, 13. Normally section 11, 12, 13 ये तो कंडीशन ही है, आपको बुक्स रखनी है, आपको ऑडिट रिपोर्ट देनी है, आपको 11(5) पे इन्वेस्टमेंट करना है, ये सारा कंडीशन ही तो है। इसलिए हम लोग का मानना था कि CIT जब रजिस्ट्रेशन ग्रांट करता है तो एडिशनल कंडीशन इंपोज नहीं कर सकता है, बिकॉज section 11, 12, 13 itself is a condition. So you can't put any additional condition at the time of granting the registration. But this year 10AC has been granted with more than 10 additional conditions. वो conditions क्या क्या हैं? As and when there is a move to amend or alter the objects, even the rules and regulation, prior approval of the commission should be taken. तो पहले क्या था, ऑब्जेक्ट चेंज होने से अपने को री-रजिस्ट्रेशन कराना पड़ता था। अब ऑब्जेक्ट चेंज हो रहा है या रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन भी चेंज हो रहे हैं, तो आपको प्रायर अप्रूवल लेना पड़ेगा CIT से। ठीक है, आपका म्यूट है महेंद्र जी।
सर प्रायर अप्रूवल तो पहले भी लेना पड़ता था सर।
ना पहले ऑब्जेक्ट के लिए था, ऑब्जेक्ट के लिए था कि आपको
ऑब्जेक्ट के लिए, ओके।
यहाँ पर रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन की बात की आ गई।
अच्छा,
ऑब्जेक्ट का भी वहां मीनिंग दूसरा था एक्चुअली। ठीक है। सेकंड, अ पब्लिक नोटिस ऑफ द एक्टिविटीज कैरिड ऑन और टू बी कैरिड ऑन द टारगेट ग्रुप शैल बी डिस्प्लेड एट द रजिस्टर्ड ऑफिस और डेजिग्नेटेड ऑफिस ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। आप किस बेनिफिशियरी के लिए क्या एक्टिविटी कर रहे हैं, आपका डिस्प्ले करना है। The registered office or the principal place of activity of the applicant should not be transferred outside the jurisdiction of the judicial commissioner except without the prior approval. आपकी कलकत्ता के अंडर में थी और आप उसको पटना लेके जाना चाह रहे हैं, तो आपको CIT से पहले प्रायर अप्रूवल लेना पड़ेगा। ये सेंसिबल है, लेकिन ये आपको कंडीशंस आ रही है उसमें। No asset shall be transferred without the knowledge of jurisdictional commissioner of income tax or anyone, including society or non-profit organization. तो आप जो भी एसेट बिक्री करना चाहेंगे, ट्रांसफर करना चाहेंगे, you have to give an intimation to the relevant CIT. Again, all public money so received including for corpus or any contravention shall be routed through a bank account. जो भी एक बैंक अकाउंट से रूट होंगे, उसका नंबर अपने को देना पड़ेगा। कि this is the bank account through which you are receiving the public money including corpus. So ये जो एक्टिव 5 जो अलग से जो कंडीशन 10AC के फॉर्म में दे दिया है जो कि पहले नहीं थे, तो ये लेकर के जब से आपको मिला है रजिस्ट्रेशन, देख लीजिएगा, हो सकता है आपने बैंक अकाउंट खोला है, हो सकता है कि आपने डिस्प्ले नहीं किया है, हो सकता है आपने आपका जो रेगुलेशंस अपने चेंज करते रहते हैं. So now these additional conditions has to be complied with.
इसके जो एक जो कंडीशन था सर डिस्प्ले वाला,
हाँ,
तो वो दिखाइए एक बार. A public notice of the activity carried on or to be carried on and the target group intended beneficiary shall be duly displayed. सर अपना अगर कोई स्पेसिफिक टारगेट ग्रुप नहीं है, फॉर द जनरल पब्लिक एट लार्ज है, तभी सर एक्टिविटी का डिस्प्ले करनी पड़ेगी.
नहीं तो आपका खाली एक्टिविटी का नोट दे दीजिएगा वहां पर, क्या करते हैं आप.
तो सर जैसे मेरी ऑफिस में सर एक रजिस्टर्ड है, तो मेरे को क्या डिस्प्ले मतलब गेट के बाहर लगाना पड़ेगा?
ये तो यही बोल रहा है, आपका जो 10AC फॉर्म आया है ना जो रजिस्ट्रेशन का, उसमें लिखा हुआ है ये चीज. तो अभी तक हम लोग इसको नहीं मान रहे थे, बिकॉज पहले भी बहुत से CIT, कभी साउथ के CIT के ये सब आता रहता था कंडीशंस, बिकॉज दोज कंडीशंस वर नॉट फॉर्मिंग पार्ट ऑफ 11, 12, 13. भाई आपको पार्लियामेंट ने जो 11, 12, 13 पास किया है कंडीशन के साथ में, in their wisdom these are not the condition for 11, 12, 13. How the CIT by its own wisdom can give an additional condition? ठीक है, ये पॉइंट फॉर डिबेट था, और इसका दिल्ली ट्रिब्यूनल का जजमेंट भी है कि CIT को पावर नहीं है एडिशनल कंडीशन इंपोज करने का. लेकिन आफ्टर दिस 10AC फॉर्म में जो एडिशनल कंडीशन आई और कंसिडरेशन प्रोसीडिंग्स में उसको लीगलाइज कर दिया उन्होंने कि वो भी फॉलो नहीं करने, आपको कंसिडरेशन प्रोसीडिंग इनिशिएट हो जाएगा. तो आई थिंक दिस विल क्रिएट अ ह्यूज लीगल पेंडोरा बॉक्स कि वेदर दोज कंडीशंस वर इटसेल्फ लीगली टेनेबल और नॉट, और नहीं है तो फिर कैंसिलेशन प्रोसीडिंग उसके लिए चलेगी कि नहीं चलेगी. लेकिन द फैक्ट ऑफ द मैटर इज अमेंडमेंट ये ऐसा आ चुका है. एंड
सर अमेंडमेंट तो सिर्फ आपके रजिस्ट्रेशन सर्टिफिकेट्स में लिखा गया है.
हाँ, उसी में लिखा हुआ है, उसी की बात कर रहे हैं वो.
कैन इट ओवरराइड द एक्ट? एक्ट में तो ऐसा कुछ दिया ही नहीं.
It should not. In my opinion, it should not. लेकिन एक लीगल मैटर हो गया ना, लीगल मैटर हो गया ये.
हाँ, पॉइंट ऑफ
लॉ हो गया, पॉइंट ऑफ लॉ हो गया ना ये.
बिल्कुल
पॉइंट ऑफ लॉ हो गया. So point I am making is we must aware of these conditions. We must know कि इसका compliance जितना हो सके अपने करते रहें, कि कारण कि most of the NGOs तो legal debate में जा नहीं पाएगा until the professional bodies उसको लेके जाएं. अदरवाइज NGO के लिए तो इंडिविजुअल लेवल में लेके जाने के लिए बहुत ही उसकी मुश्किल है वहां पर. तो ये हो गया कि स्पेसिफाइड रीजंस जो है उन्होंने अपने बुक्स नहीं रखी, उसके लिए भी आपका सेपरेट बुक्स नहीं रखनी, आप 11/4 की आपका कैंसिलेशन प्रोसीडिंग इनिशिएट कर सकते हैं. तो दिस ऑपरेशनल रीजंस वर नेवर अ पार्ट ऑफ कैंसिलेशन प्रोसीडिंग्स. ब्रॉडली माने आपका था नॉन जेन्युइन एक्टिविटी है, ऑब्जेक्ट के हिसाब से नहीं है, ओनली ऑन दोस केसेस कैंसिलेशन होता था. एंड बोल के वी आर नॉट वेल वर्स्ड विद द कैंसिलेशन प्रोसीडिंग्स एट ऑल. भी अपने सोचते नहीं थे कि हमारी नॉन जेन्युइन एक्टिविटीज है, बट नॉन बिकॉज ऑफ दिस नॉन कंप्लायंसेस विद द ऑपरेशनल लॉ, this will give a huge Pandora box for this concession process. And this become more important when we know how the lead will be generated. Now the act says the lead for concession processing shall be initiated at 3 levels. The PCIT or PC received reference from the assessing officer under second provision 143. Mane, at the time of making assessment, the assessing officer can refer the case for concession proceedings. And वो बोल रहे हैं कि in the assessment proceedings, if the information comes to the domain of the assessing officer, then he will stop the assessment proceedings. He will transfer the information to the CIT. When the CIT will pass an order, either refusing or not refusing, then after the assessment proceedings initiate हो. So that means यदि पुराना जमाना होता, फेसलेस का नहीं होता, तब तो ये बहुत बड़ा पेंडोरा बॉक्स हो जाता. आज तो फेसलेस है बोल करके अपने को इतनी चिंता नहीं है, लेकिन यदि ITO during the assessment proceedings can refer the case for cancellation proceedings, is not the assessment proceedings. And assessment में JCIT से अप्रूवल लेना अलग बात होती है, लेकिन cancellation proceedings जो कि बहुत ही कॉस्टली अफेयर है NGO के लिए, NGO का अस्तित्व खत्म हो जाएगा उससे. तो whether again the legal issues, whether the ITO has a power, power to refer, though it is as per the manual it is the power, but how far it is legally sustainable, again a point of law. Second, the PCIT or PC notices occurrence from one or more special violation during any previous year through his own sources. And thirdly, the case has been selected in accordance with the risk management strategy of CBDT. Again, the CBDT की जो risk management strategy है, उससे आप scrutiny करें बात अलग है, नहीं उससे आप cancellation proceedings initiate कर देंगे, ये भी एक बहुत बड़ी बात हो जाएगी. Cancellation proceedings means aggregated income पर टैक्स आपको लग रहा है, और NGO का अस्तित्व खत्म हो रहा है. तो how far जिस रिस्क मैनेजमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी के इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंसिलेशन प्रोसेसिंग के लिए लॉफुल है कि नहीं है, या ITO को एस्टिमेट किया है नहीं, उसका बिलीव कंप्लीट ही नहीं हुआ है, उसका एस्टिमेट ऑर्डर उन्होंने ड्राफ्ट नहीं किया, उसके पहले वो रेफर कर रहा है. So, but all this has been described as one of the method of obtaining lead for cancellation prospects. And propose क्या किया है कि where the AO is satisfied that any of the specified violation has been committed by the trust, he shall send a reference to the PCIT to withdraw the approval, and no order making a statement shall be made without giving effect to the order passed by the PCIT. That means you have to hold the order. And timeline for जो assessment order की जो timeline थी, that has been extended. Clause 13 has been inserted under section 1 to 153, providing that for the purpose of the period of limitation, the timeline, the time gap जो है वो नहीं extend compute की जाएगी. The period commencing from the date on which the assessing officer makes the reference and ending on the date when the copy of order is received by him. ये जो timeline है वो 143 के timeline में exclude हो जाएगी. How the CIT will move? The call for information or to make inquiry to satisfy the occurrence of a specified violation, pass an order in writing, cancelling the registration after affording a reasonable opportunity, or he can also pass an order refusing to cancel. He can also say, I will not cancel. IT को बोल सकता है, दोनों पावर उसके पास में है. Forward a copy of the cancellation order or order refusing to cancel to the AO. Timeline within 6 months. CIT को timeline दे दी कि within 6 months आपको order pass करना है. And shall be effective from 1st April 22. And cancellation power also include cancellation of provisional registration. अभी के law में provisional registration 3 साल का मिलता था, that was not subject to cancellation. लेकिन this amendment में even provisional registration can also be cancelled. And similar amendment has also been made under section 1023C. जो cancellation की जितनी अपने बात कर रहे हैं, similar line में the amendments have been made under section 1023C as well. So इसमें जो we have discussed whether the AO can make a reference for cancellation to the PCIT before completing the assessment, whether it is legally sustainable or not, ये एक issue emerge हो रहा है, जो कि we have to, as a professional bodies, we have to discuss and take note of this. The second बन रहा है कि can CIT impose additional conditions at the time of registration not provided as per law, and can those conditions becomes a reason for cancellation, जो अपने बात की है. Again, a second point for debate हो सकता है अपने professional bodies के लिए, how we can deal up on these specific points. Now, whether the provisional registration can also be cancelled? Yes. जो पहले provisional registration के लिए cancellation procedure नहीं लगती थी, now the amended provisions of cancellation shall also apply to provisional registrations. So ये cancellations के changes आए हैं, so we have to very raising certain legal issues, fundamental, and also raising certain operational issues which we should be adhered to and we should comply with. Now, the second key amendment is bringing consistency into exemption regime. We have already discussed 1023C approval category 1 regime and 11, 12, 13 second regime. And we have already discussed that this proposed amendment has wanted to bridge the gap. What are the so this year under 1023C also the requirement of furnishing of return becomes a condition. Earlier it was not in 1023C. We are always preferring 1023C much better because less compliance. But now furnishing of return as in 1012AB, the similar condition is imposed here. The condition for uploading the audit report has been inserted here. The restriction on payment to a specified person 13(1)(c) का similar conditions यहाँ पर impose कर दिया. And पहले 1023C में 11(2) के लिए accumulation का नियम था, but form 10 वगैरह नहीं specify किया हुआ था. अब similar mechanism यहाँ पर भी लेकर आ गए. And aggregate जो 1023C का cancellation होने से 150D में नहीं जाते थे. And that's why we are referring client कि भाई इतने नॉन कंप्लायंस हो गए, आप बेटर है कि आप 1023 में रजिस्ट्रेशन कराइए, बिकॉज दिस रजिस्ट्रेशन इज नॉट सब्जेक्ट टू 115 TD. Though those clients were not able to take CSR fund, but they were not subject to 115 TD. But now this amendment has been come that even 1023 approval cases will be also subject to aggregate income under section 115 TD. So all the new proposed amendments जो भी हुए हैं 12AB के लिए, that are also been inserted for 1023C as we have already discussed. अभी भी यदि अपने देखेंगे तो there are differences. Section 11, 12, 13 में there is a restriction on income applied outside India, but there is no such restriction still in here in 1023C. In 11, 12, 13 we can go for the second year spending in subsequent year, but there is no such option in section 11, 12 in 1023C. And retrospective exemption in line with provision of section 12AB. If you are getting a 12AB registration, then just that registration benefit will apply even for the past assessments. But similar benefits are not available for approval under section 1023C. So even now, if you are a new NGO, but you are working since last so many years, or you're first time applying for 1026C or 12AB, we will advise to go for 12AB, because once you are getting 12AB, then the 12AB benefit also applies for your past pending assessments as well. So we understand this is a move towards one regime from the existing two regimes. Otherwise, there is no point for having two window process. From the next year, the 1026C may go. Now, again, the issue comes, which I think Sushil Pansaka has also raised in the change scenario, whether we should go for 1026C or whether we should go for 12AB. To my understanding, if you are going for a funding, CSR funding, you have no option but you have go for 12AB registration, because CSR funding 1026C NGOs are not eligible. So for now, it might be a technical mistake from the MCA part not to include 1026C, only to include 12AB. But so far that mistake or that technical part is not there. If your NGO wants to take the CSR grant, then they have to go for 12AB registration. Again, if you are an existing organization working for last so many years, but you are first time applying for approval or registration, then you have to go for 12AB, because once you are getting 12AB, it also applies to your past assessments, past pending assessments. So in both the account, we prefer that 12AB has become more beneficial to the SSC rather than 1026C. But it will again depend upon case-to-case basis. But these two are the broad parameters to understand the difference. The backyard benefit in the case of a newer registration and the funding of the CSR funding. Now, the third key amendment is benefit to a specified person. We all know section 13(1)(c) has dealt upon with if you are making payment to a trustees and that is found to be unreasonable, that means that is found to be giving any benefit to the trustees, then whether the total benefit of section 11, 12, 13 was to be withdrawn or only the amount subject to the benefit shall be subject to tax. I think a number of judgment has been come and we says only the amount subject to this benefit amount shall be subject to tax. And that amount was subject to tax under section 164(2) at a MMR, maximum marginal rate. So now this provision has been changed and they are saying 13(1)(c) deals with the implication on providing unreasonable benefit to the specified person. Presently, providing unreasonable benefits shall result into withdrawal of applicability of section 11(12), but there was no clarity on the amount of income which shall be subject to tax, though as per the judicial pronouncement, only the amount of benefits was subject to tax. But now the proposed amendment has brought certainty by providing that the amount applied as unreasonable benefit shall be the deemed income for the purpose of this section. That means if the amount applied as a benefit is suppose 10 lakh, then 10 lakhs shall be the income subject to tax. So this certainty has come. There is no point for going into litigation. Only the amount of benefit shall be subject to tax. Again, what shall be the tax rate? Such income shall be charged at 30%, not as an AOP, because new section 100 PPBI has been inserted, and this situation, this income has also become part of a specified income under section 115 PPBI. That means if you are making any payment to a trustee and that payment is found to be excessive and resulting into benefit, and that amount, suppose 10 lakh, on 10 lakh you have to pay 30% tax under the new amended provision 115 PPBI. Again, you have to pay also penalty. This benefit to a specified person, not only 30% tax, a new section 271 AA has been inserted, which provides 100% of the amount. 10 lakhs, then you have to pay 3 lakh as a tax and 10 lakhs as a penalty. And if in the second year, again, you found to have a same violation, then the penalty amount will exceed to 200%. So basically, the payment to a specified person, if it results into benefit, all payments to specified persons are not benefit. If it is more than what he deserves, then only that amount shall be subject to tax at 30%. First violation, 100% of penalty. Second violation, 200% of penalties. Whether possibility of cancellation, though this violation has not been directly included in the specified reason for cancellation, but one possibly argue that this might be the income used other than object. Because if you are using the income of the trust for giving benefit to the specified person and you are doing it on year-to-year basis, then the ITO may conclude that this is the case when you are using the fund not other than the object of the institution. And that in that clause, the first clause, your case may be taken. So we have to be very particular when we're passing on any benefit to the specified person. And similar amendments have been brought in section 1023C. Now, similar amendments has brought in section 13(1)(d). 13(1)(d), we all know it is by making investment in a specified mode. It is proposed that for violation of section 13(1)(d), the income subject to tax shall be the amount deposited or invested. Suppose you have invested 10 lakhs of rupees in a non-specified mode, then on 10 lakh of rupees you have to pay tax. Interestingly, this violation has not escaped the included as a reason for cancellation. Earlier it was 13(1)(d) violation, again cancellation procedure can be initiated, but again this has not been included. Might be they are taking 30% tax at this point of time. So what are the implications? What shall be the implication if the violation of investment is noticed in subsequent year, much after the year in which the investment was made? Suppose your investment, your assessment under scrutiny is for the assessment year 21-22, in which there is certain investment income, but the non-specified investment is 3 years, 4 years back, not in the year in which the investment is made. What shall be the consequences? As per our understanding, in this year only the income shall be taxed from that investment, but the investment taxation of investment shall be depending upon your 148 time limit, because this investment is not done in the year in which the assessment are being done. Then what shall be the applicable law? If the case law, if the amount held in the violation of section 13(1)(d), only the income from investment shall be subject to tax. As of now, most of the case laws dealing with 13(1)(d) violation, they are saying you have to pay tax only on the income, not on the amount invested. So I think this amendment has negated all those decisions. Now the amount invested has to be taxed, not only the income. So these are the changes in section 13(1)(c) and 13(1)(d). Now, very, very crucial amendment in by providing the new provisions. So far in our first session, we have discussed, we have to compute income, we have to compute application of income, then we have to apply for accumulation and those things. Now they are saying, if you are making any violation, you have not furnished your return of income, you have not submitted your audit report, then what you do? As of now, the entire amount was subject to tax, right? We have to go for continuation petition and those things. Now they are providing a special provision for tax computation, another set of method, how to compute income. So section 13(1) and 13(1) has been inserted. Separate computation provision on specified non-compliances. They have provided specified non-compliances. And what are those non-compliances? Application of section 13(8). 13(8) means if you have a business receipt of more than 20%, if your NGO is engaged in last lien, other than public charitable activity, you are not falling under the first lien, you are falling under the last lien of the charitable purpose, and your business like receipt is more than 20%, then as per 13(10), benefit of section 11 and 13 is withdrawn for that year. Then you are not maintaining books of account which you are required to maintain. Then you have not submitted your audit report, or you have not submitted ITR. For these 4 violations, if you have committed, then you have to go for another mechanism, a separate newly inserted mechanism of computing income subject to tax. And as per the present provision, all these violations, section 11-12 benefit is withdrawn, meaning thereby the entire amount subject without application amount was subject to tax. So in that way, this section is a beneficial section for the concerned NGO, because they are providing how to compute income in such cases. They are saying the income chargeable tax shall be computed after allowing deduction of the expenditure other than capital expenditure. That means all revenue expenditure, all revenue application shall be allowed, even because of these tackling violations also. Suppose you have a business like receipt of more than 20%, then also 11-12 benefit is not withdrawn. You can still claim revenue expenditure as application, provided the expenditure is not from corpus. Same condition not applies to the normal cases. The expenditure is not from the borrowing. The claim of depreciation is not in respect of asset which has already been claimed as application. Expenditure is not in the form of contribution or donation to any other person. Inter-charity donation they will not consider. And disallowances to be made for cash expenditure on TDS violations, and no set of losses of earlier year. So meaning thereby, for the 4 specified violations, non-books of account,
No, but when you hear all this, you feel as an organization.
Hello?
सब I
Hello?
told you Arindam part तो ये सब तो है. Even president and secretary, just to bypass things, they are getting money directly to that organization. There again, मेरे को बोल के कोई फायदा नहीं है. Whole lot of them.
Hello.
मगज तो खराब है इसलिए मन नहीं करता है.
Keep away.
I get very irritated. I ask lots of questions all the time.
See when
This year, what happened in Saturday, we have a very nice member. He's on the finance committee of.
हम थोड़ा म्यूट कर दो उनको, नीलिमा जी को.
He's a nice enough fellow. Yeah, I know. You know, he's nice enough fellow. Teacher. Yeah, that was the mother. Mother, you know Tara.
So we are dealing with just 4 specified violations हैं section 13 में. Non books of account का, 215 का जो business receipt है, non submission of return or non submission of audit report. In those 4 cases, presently no expenditure was allowed. Now the revenue expenditure shall be allowed while computing income subject to tax. Subject to previous provision, subject to cash expenditure, inter-charity donation बात नहीं मिलेगी. So at least it is a way of some way of relief to the NGOs who are in those violation category. We understand if those violations can be rectified through contravention petition, they will not fall under this. But if those violations have not been rectified through contravention petition, then the separate mechanism for computing income. And similar amendments have been made in section 1026C as well. So these are the new provision for certain violation. Now the special rate of taxation for certain income. Now 115 BBI has been inserted, and that says specified income includes income applied outside India. So income applied outside India without CBDT approval will constitute income subject to tax as per the present provisions. Again, income under section 11(1)(b) and 11(3). 11(1)(b) means you have gone for next year option 9A form and you could not apply. Then the resultant amount of option shall be the income subject to tax. 11(3), 5-year accumulation. In the 6th year, you could not apply. The 6th year, the amount shall be subject to tax. This will come under section 115 BBI. Then, specified person benefit, investment other than specified mode, and then income accumulated or set apart in excess of 15%. Meaning thereby 85 तक आपको खर्चा करना था और आपने 80 खर्चा किया, तो 5 रुपया was normal taxation. Now that 5 rupees will be 115 BBI. So that means though concept of AOP is there, but for the purpose of NGO, through 115 BBI, the AOP doesn't exist. Now everybody has to pay tax at the rate of 30% as per 115 BBI. Because accumulation be more than 85% वाला जो 15% वाला है, that income, that accumulation amount पे भी आपको tax देना 115 BBI के ऊपर. So वो क्या बोल रहे हैं? The newly set section says the income tax on specified income shall be as under.
Alia, that whole big tree trunk fell.
Where?
In Rotary Southern, that huge tree.
The amount of income tax calculated at 30% on the aggregate of specified income.
This person, you know,
and the amount of income tax SSC would have been chargeable had the total income has been reduced by the aggregate. This is non-specified income. So basically, this specified income as per 115 BBI shall be subject to tax of 30%, and there should not be any allowance for any expenditure or past year carry forward losses. Now the issue is relevance of section 164(2) after the insertion of section 115 BBI. Now 164(2) says if there is a violation of 139, 13(1)(c) or 13(1)(d), you have to pay tax at MMR. That means more than 42%. Newly inserted section says for the same violation, you have to pay tax on 30%. And there is no consequential amendment in section 164(2). So till that consequential amendment is made under section 164(2), this inconsistency remains in the after the amendment, because for the same violation, there are two tax rates. One is under 164(2) at MMR, and one is at 115 BBI at 30%. I think this is an anomaly which can be rectified in a process of budget. And DTPA can also brought this anomaly to the notice of the government. Now, second issue is we had discussed about the special computation provision 1310. Whether that income will be subject to section 150 BI or whether it shall be 30% from or as an OP. So, as per my understanding, 115 BBI specified 4 violation doesn't include 1310, and that's why 1310 will go the tax rate applicable to non-15 BBI category. That means for violation of income computed under section 1310, you can pay tax as an AOP. You are not required to go for 115 BBI because 15 BBI conditions are only 4 conditions, and that doesn't include this special conditions. But again, indirectly 115 BBI also covered these conditions because the specified violation is non-maintenance of books, non-submission of return, and for that they have given a specified a separate method to compute. So indirectly, one may also argue that whatever income we computed from 1310 shall be subject to 150 BBI or 30%, because these incomes have been computed only for those violations which have been also included in 150 BBI. So, but again, there is no clarity. Most of the view is on 30% of taxation, but this would have included this as also in 150 BBI also to bring clarity on the matter. Now, very, very important amendment for all of us, because the first time required to maintain books of account has been introduced. One additional condition: the books of account and other documents are kept and to be maintained in such form, in such manner, and at such place that may be prescribed. That means they will formulate a rules, and they will formulate in which form the books of account has to be maintained, in which manner the account should be kept, and at what place that should be kept. All 3 things: form, manner, and place. I think through rules it will be clear, but so far as we have to understand, the maintaining of books of account has become one of the conditions to claim benefit of section 11, 12, and 13. Though maintenance of books was an implicit condition because there was a requirement for audit, and audit cannot be done without having a books of account. But by this amendment, they want to make it explicit, and not only explicit for maintaining books, but they are also going to provide the form, the manner, and the place. So it is not that this requirement was earlier also. There is nothing new here. Nothing new. It will come when they will specify the form, manner, and place. Nowadays, we can keep our books at any place, even if that at the CS office or so. Now everything will be guided by the new rules going to be formulated in this regard. And section 1310 has been inserted for computing income chargeable tax if the books of account as provided are not maintained. यदि ये books अपने नहीं maintain करते हैं, जो कि उन पर, then 1310 will apply, and there is a separate mechanism to compute your income subject to tax. And similar amendment has been made in section 1023C. Now, issues arising cash basis accounting for application, but is still open. Option can be exercised in form number 9A. I think I will deal upon after some time. First, we deal with application of income on payment basis. Now, the 8th amendment is, it is proposed that the amount of application shall be considered only if it is actually paid, irrespective of the year in which the liability arises, and irrespective of the method of accounting regularly implied by the HST or the NGO. That means, so far as income was more or less decided, it is on cash basis, because section 11 starts the person in receipt of income. The word receipt has been used. Section 12, the voluntary contribution received by the organization. In both the places, charging section, the word receipt was used. And that's why there was no misunderstanding that whether income has to be computed on cash basis or accrual basis. Only the confusion came when the form 9A says income not received, you can also apply for 9A. So that is certain contradiction, because section 11 charging section says only the person in receipt of the income from trust property. Section 12 says person receiving of voluntary contribution, but the option exercising time, they are saying income not received. That means that part of that the accrual can be there. But I think that part can be used only for the TDS part, because we know we have to reconcile our TDS thing with to claim the TDS. So we advise our client that only to claim TDS, you can have your accrual, but otherwise all the receipts should be on accrual basis. But for application, there was no clarity. It is should be cash basis or accrual basis. Now this amendment has brought this very, very clear. The application has also been on the accrual basis, on the cash basis. Now the issue is very for section 8 company. Accounts has to be maintained on accrual basis because there is a mandate under the Companies Act. Though under Societies Act and Trust are not guided by the Companies Act, and no accounting standard can be applied as such because their stakeholders are different. So they can follow cash basis accounting, but under the Section 8 company, they have to follow accrual basis accounting. So how from the accrual basis accounting, they will convert to cash basis to determine the amount of application. They are not saying the NGO has to maintain the accounts on cash basis. What they are saying, the application amount has to be determined on cash basis. So the issue was raised in the first session, whether NGO should maintain accounts on cash basis or accrual basis. My understanding is this: as per the income tax law, the receipt has to be on the basis of cash. There is no controversy here. Only for reconciling the TDS, we can go for accrual basis, because form number 9A gives some leverage for that. After this amendment, all the applications should also be cash basis. So for NGO, for Section 11, 12, 13, the cash basis accounting becomes the key. Similar is the case under FCRA Act. They also advocate the cash basis accounting. And that's why in NGO, it is always advisable to prepare a recent payment account in addition to income expenditure and balance sheet. Because your income expenditure can be on accrual and balance sheet can be on accrual. But we compute our income on the basis of a recent payment account. And that's why it is very important for all the NGOs to have a third statement. And the one basic statement is recent payment account, in addition to income expenditure and balance sheet. And recent payment accounts will form the basis on which we can compute income and on which we can compute the application amount. However, Sushilji has also pointed out, they are going for the application amount on cash basis, but in a Section 8 company, you have to follow the mercantile system. That means TDS has to be complied with, whichever point is earlier. So might be the TDS has been deducted, but the amount has been paid subsequently. That means your TDS year will be different and the amount of application will be different. So this type of anomaly has come by coming to the cash basis accounting. And this amendment has also been introduced for similar amendment for 1026 NGOs. Now for accumulation in Section 11.2 and 11.3, as Pran Sukhaji has already told, the 6-year window benefit has been gone. Now they are saying we have to spend within 5 years. So 6th-year window has gone. And this amendment is similar amendment is proposed in 1023C. Now the issue is whether 5th year expiring on 22 this year, whether this window will go or this window will go in next year. The only point for debate. For my understanding, this amendment has become applicable from 1/4/2023. That means from 23-24. So for 22-23 assessment year, still 6th year window is there. In next year, when we are going to submit our return, we have to go for 23 window also and 22 window also 1 year extension. So in 23, there are 2 window going to expire, for 22 also and for 23 also. But I think for 22, there is no planning for this year because this year 6th year window still exists. Now the last amendment and very crucial amendment for voluntary contribution to religious institutions. Voluntary contribution for the renovation and repairs of religious spaces notified under clause B of subsection 2 of section 80G. We all know religious institutions are not subject to ATG approval if more than 5% expenditure is on religious purposes. However, section 80G2B allows certain religious places of national importance to get an ATG approval under that special section 80G2B5, where the government notified that work under this section and allows that repairs and maintenance donation to be part of ATG approval. Now this amendment says section 80G5 is a separate section allowing religious trust being a place of public worship throughout the state and notified as such by the central government can also apply and avail ATG benefit. The proposed amendment is to bring certainty on the treatment of the voluntary contribution received by such approval of ATG, and it provides that the amount of voluntary contribution received can be treated as a received towards corpus at the option of the NGO. They are saying the recipient NGO has the option to treat that donation under section 80G2.5 as a corpus. And this amendment has come from 21, from last year. To my understanding, this may have come maybe because of Ayodhya. They have collected a huge amount of money that is not going to be spent within the same year, not going to spend within 5 years to come. And that's why this type of amendment has come, which says that the recipient NGO at their option can treat that donation at section 2G5 as a corpus donation. And what are those conditions? Corpus to be applied only for the purpose for which the voluntary contribution is received. That means this amount has to be applied for repairs and renovation. corpus shall not be applied for making contribution to another donation. Inter-charity donation will not be allowed. Corpus to be maintained separately. That means 11.5 investment you have to make as per 11.5. And if you are not, what are the consequences? If any trust or institutions has treated any sum received by it as forming part of corpus and subsequently any of the said conditions violated, then in such case, such sum shall be deemed to the income of the trust or institutions in the previous year in which the violation takes place. So now this amendment has not given any timeline which this donation has to be spent. Just you have to put in 11.5, you can spend in 5th year, you can spend in 6th year, you can spend in 9th year. But whenever you spend, you have to spend in the same purpose. And this amendment has come from assessment year 21-22, 1 year back. And it is to be clarified that whether this amendment is for race organization per se, or only for that part of donation we are subject to ATG approval. As per my understanding, it is only for that part of donation that covers under section ATG 2B5, only for that block of donation, this provision applies. It is not applicable to the religious organization per se. This apply only that part of donation which are covered under section ATG 2B. So these are some of the key changes which we have discussed. Now I think we can also take up some issues on the amendment from the members. I think errors and consistencies I've already covered in my presentation. I'm not coming again.
Right, sir, you have covered. Any questions from the audience? I think, sir, you have already explained so much that every point has cleared, but the confusion will arise day after tomorrow when we will read the thing.
So basically, I try to summarize all the amendments and try to give the legal point also wherever.
The basic thing is that in corporation there is no timing for the investment.
No. The timing of the investment is there. No?
For expanding there is no timing.
For this voluntary contribution for repairs and maintenance, only for ATG 2B. Very limited mandirs are getting this. Not everybody is getting this. Kamakya Temple.
Suppose I receive any donation as a corpus fund.
No, it is not for that.
Okay.
They are saying if you are a religious organization and you are not otherwise eligible for ATG approval, then is a separate section ATG 2B, where if your religious place is of national importance, like Kamakya Temple in Guwahati, they can make an application to the CBDT that they want to raise funds for repairs and maintenance of their religious place.
Okay.
And for that, the special permission granted for ATG approval, like for Ayodhya. Okay. So for those type of donation under section 82.5, that can before this amendment, everything has to be spent 85%. And that repairs works takes time. They have to apply for ATG, then 10 year form number 10, maybe within 5 years this is not completed. And to these practical difficulties for those type of institutions and covering only those donations under section 82B5, not all the donations. This is special provision has come.
Any question from the audience? Anyone want to raise any question? Barkhaji, are you there?
Yes, Bhaiya. Yes, Bhaiya.
So, Pransukhaji, we should hand over the session to you. Pransukhaji?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Very nice deliberation. As I can see from chat boxes, everybody is very happy. And
Yes,
as it was expected, and very good 360-degree analysis of charitable amendments by Suresh, who is very near and dear to us, and very, very nice. If still there are some issues left, then always we are open for discussion or can be accessed. But charitable trust is a subject which is never free from any controversy, and lot of incongruency or inconsistencies remain still. But government is also trying and learning and becoming wiser day by day and making amendments year by year. So I thank Suresh for very nice deliberation and hand over to the organizations. Thank you.
Sir, we can see still we have double century participant still 2-1 is still here.
Yeah, that is very good. Very encouraging.
Very good answer. And to the last time, still there is a 2-1. Means that the topic and the deliberation of Pransukhaji and Kejriwal ji, sir. we can easily, you can understand. So how important and how was the good discussion and deliberation from your end, sir. Now I request Barkhaji to offer a formal vote of thanks to our speaker and chairman.
Thank you. I thank today's session chairman, Sushilji Pransukha, for sparing his valuable time and giving insights on the topic. And I also thank the speaker of the day, Mr. Suresh Kejriwal ji, for sparing his valuable time and giving deep insights on charitable trust and also the amendments in the recent budget. I'm not only hopeful, but I think that our participants have benefited immensely from today's deliberation. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I also thank all the participants for patient hearing. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pransukha sir. Thank you, Kejriwal sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I
Very much.
think, sir, we need one more session in our
Yeah.
DT